airplane noise, and so we covered a lot of ground, provided, kind of where we are and, potentially where we could go moving forward. So on the 13th, the roundtable will have a technical working group meeting at the airport. So last, I guess about a week or so ago, I did have a meeting with some FAA representatives, trying to get an understanding.
Can you tell us who they were?
So it was Glenn Martin.
And who's Glenn Martin?
So Glenn Martin, there's several department heads within the FAA, and he's one of them. There are 3 departments that we're really involved with. There's Glenn Martin's department. There's Sierra Pacific something. They deal with the air traffic controllers, that operation. And then there's the folks up in Seattle, and they're part of the design team. They're the ones that would create the procedures. And so we had Mindy Wright and Steve Carnes from the folks up in Seattle, and then we had this other person who I'd never met before. Her name is, I forgot her last name, but it's Tanya. She was filling in for Don Kirby. Now Don, he's with TRACON. He'll be at the technical working group meeting on Thursday night. And so you have these 3, I call them like the 3-headed beasts. You're trying to get these 3 departments to be, to listen to each other, right? To work with each other, because within the FAA, it's a large bureaucracy, and and there are these, it's like turf things that go on, and it sucks. Here we are in this situation, and we want to see some relief, because our citizens are having a hard time dealing with the airplane noise. So every time I have these meetings, you try and boil it down to what are the key issues, because so we had that document that all of you have seen from the roundtable. It's too big for the FAA folks to manage. It's like, okay, whatever. So we broke it down to an outline, and then within that outline, what are the key things that they can commit to? So, and these are the 4 things that we've talked about here with the group. Looking at the nighttime procedure, 050, where you do the U-turn and head down the bay, making the night having it be a southbound option. Right now, it's just north and east and west. Going out the Golden Gate at night. And so that is something that the FAA has said, yes, that looks doable. But because it's, adding a new procedure, so to speak, right? It's a 2-year process. So the 050, that's something that they've already been doing. Let's get them to do that. We're trying to eliminate the stick procedures at night. So now we have, the candle coming out of Oakland and the stick during the day coming out of San Francisco. And so, from the last meeting, I asked Bert, okay, we need to get some temporary monitors. He has agreed to that. Now, as a council member, remember, this is a part-time gig. So besides just working on the airplane noise stuff, I'm also working on Baylands and other things. And, I have a business to run. And so, I'll put out the request, but I'm not always on top of these people to do their stuff, right?
5 hours a week to work with. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but he did say, yes, we can get those temporary monitors. I also asked him to provide some data, and I'm hoping when he comes, he can show this. I want to see what are the noise disturbances that were created flying the stick when they went over the stick waypoint, the SEPTI waypoint, and then at a spot, say, near Candlestick. And using a 1/4 mile radius, right? Not the 1 mile radius, because that's silly. You're using like old technology and not really being efficient with the technology that exists today. However, the 1 mile radius is part of the rules. And they always fall, they go to that thing and it ticks me off all the time. But those are the rules. So hopefully we get that data. But I also want to see, how does altitude play into it? If a plane goes over my house at 3,000 feet, it's a lot different. It's much more of a negative impact than if it goes over at 6,000 feet. Granted, I don't like when it goes over at 6,000 feet either, but 3,000 between 6,000 makes a difference, right? So now,
I've been paying attention to all of the reports that I file as I get to the noisy ones.
yeah,
Most of the bad ones are between 1,800 and 2,500 feet. After that, it tapers off. A320s and that series is obviously very much the worst. That's the high screechers.
yeah.
And typically, the bad ones will be flying at or above 200 knots versus like a nose.
Okay.
My experience is equal to yours on the speed factor, but not on the other factors.
Well, you're at a higher altitude, so for
No,
you-
I'm also at a lower altitude. Where I'm reporting is from this altitude here across the street. And what I'm experiencing, Bert said that the altitude readings on the stop jet noise recording program aren't accurate. He said they're not accurate. I don't know, how far off they might be.
Well, I can explain that.
Well,
There's a lag. The fact that they're able to identify the plane is a good idea. The fact that they get the wrong height and stuff doesn't matter, but it does tell you what the plane is and where
Right.
it's going.
Okay, well,
So to try and say, oh well, it's at this altitude is wrong. The truth of the matter is, there was a study done, and we're waiting for additional information from Bert. And this was a study done looking at the noise monitor in Brisbane, where we have the plane height in feet against this horizontal distance from the school. And it's very obvious to me that if you want to go and reduce noise, there are two ways you can do it. You can either lift it up, which is Cliff's solution, or you can move it sideways. And the amazing thing about moving it sideways is we have a bay over there where nobody votes. We have a choice.
Yeah, and let me just say that altitude is just one of the options, right? It isn't saying you can bring as many planes over Brisbane as you want as long as they're high. No,
At
that,
8,000
But
feet,
but it's
not a
just
problem.
right.
It is
Cliff, a
actually.
lot of this we've
Here's-
covered
here's
before.
no-
Absolutely.
What did the FAA say about this? You
So
met with Glenn Martin
Yeah,
2 weeks ago.
so-
What did the FAA say?
so again, I'm just telling you what Bert's going to present hopefully tonight, because this was the information that came out of our council meeting. This is the information that people wanted, right? So that's what I'm going to give you guys. At least that's what I hope to get from Bert. Also, the candle flights. We want to know what are the noise impacts from those flights, not just the for both monitors. And then let's see. All right. So another thing that I asked of Bert is, and to get to your point, Jay, in regards to dispersion. And so, trying to have more dispersion. And so, we did talk about that at the meeting. And so what I've asked Bert to get, and it was kind of last minute, so I don't know if he's going to be able to provide it, but I want to see a 7-day, right, a 1-week period, hopefully last week. I don't want to, something that's cherry picked. Give me something that's last week. I want to see what the dispersion is for stick
Well, that was
procedures,
8 weeks.
right?
I think everything was kind of messed up the last half of the week.
Yeah, there's the flight tracks, right? I want to see what the flight tracks are. And then I want to go back 2 years ago, right, before next gen. I want to see, okay, I want to compare it, the week last week and the week 2 years ago. And just so that we have a good understanding, right? We need to have a solid foundation. So now the request for moving the stick the stick waypoint. So they keep coming back to me and said, "Where do you want it, Cliff?" I said, "Look, man, I can't tell you where to put this thing." So it's because my concern is that we'll choose a place and then they'll come back and say, sorry, you can't do it, and I don't want that, because we've gone down that road before. So,
Or blame you for the results after you've chosen it.
so we've looked at SEPTI. I mean, taking the SEPTI waypoint and trying to go as far east into the water as possible. So using SEPTI as the one point, and then heading east. So that, and now with the candle flights, so those candles are coming towards us, right? They're coming out of Oakland. They're making the turn,
Early.
and so what's really frustrating about the candle is that for years they've said, well, hey, we got to turn this stick flight because the candle is coming, or it might be coming, or you don't want to have a collision. And now they're talking about having the candle turn early, and that's okay because it's higher. So now they've changed their tune that, okay, altitude, you have enough separation, you can fly these procedures in a compatible way. And so it is messed up, right? And so trying to get these folks to say, this is what we can do, and this is how we're going to do it, is difficult.
You're trying to unscramble an egg.
So, Cliff, I
Bert's here.
attended the South Bay
All right.
Arrivals meeting that occurred a day or two after your meeting. And first of all, that occurred, the FAA was impaneled in front of the select committee. It was conducted like a congressional hearing would be conducted. And the FAA was held on absolutely everything they said to total accountability. It occurred in a public arena. All of the members of that select committee asked questions multiple times on very specific and very detailed issues, and Glenn Martin had to answer them. And when he could not, he had to give a specific timeline of when he would be replying. Okay? I don't see that happening with the roundtable. That's how you hold these people accountable. It has to be in a public forum where they are in the spotlight. They are held accountable to the elected officials who are the people, represent the people who they are working for. I don't see that happening in the roundtable.
Yeah, no, you bring up a very good point, and that's something that we have addressed the FAA, that the roundtable hasn't had the same type of love, right, from the FAA. They're not showing up to our meetings. However, the roundtable is much more advanced, much more farther along in the process than the select committee.
Not by much.
And that's fine, but
very interesting things that Joe said.
let me just finish. You know what? Let me just finish, Peter. So now, what the roundtable has put forth in regards to the asks and being able to use our consultant to put forth solutions to these noise issues that are caused by these procedures. The select committee is just getting to that point. We've been, working with
to start writing their responses.
and you know what? And when you look at a lot of their responses, they've pretty much taken a lot of the language or a lot of the asks out of what we've already been working on with the FAA already. Well, I disagree with you.
Could I just ask you, Cliff? Joe Sodimian summed it up.
Okay.
3 minutes, 16 seconds into the meeting, and he said, noise is not central to the mission of the FAA. Glenn Martin said, I can't do stuff because I don't know what the density of the people are underneath is. Of course, Joe Simian said, oh, well, we can help you with that. The three questions that Joe Simian described are, what is the level of noise? How many people are annoyed? And how many times a day does this happen? I think these are criteria that ought to be used when you are working with the FAA to select where the stick's go point, where the stick's waypoint is, and where the flight shall go.
Yes.
One of the misassumptions in the attachments that we've seen in the FAA is flights over compatible land use. There is no compatible land use for you to fly over. Okay, you can fly over a cemetery. And it's like assuming that
The noise only goes straight down to
Down.
that point on the ground.
Right.
It
There's
doesn't,
no,
it
there's
fans
no
out.
fan outwards.
That's a good point.
And until we go and look at how many people are affected by the noise and the altitude and the fan outwards, we are going to get sold down the road. We need to know what this is. And one of the ways to go and do it is we need the public criteria described, Cliff, just as Joe Simerton did. We need them put into the revised attachment that goes before the select committee in 2 days' time. Not to have the criteria that can be used to select flight path A versus flight path B is really unfair and a disservice to your voters. We need those criteria described, don't you think?
Okay.
We don't need the
You know,
areas.
I hear what you're saying.
I'm
right?
not saying, Cliff.
We've been working really hard to
What am I saying,
pinpoint.
Cliff?
You're saying you're asking for these broad things that.
Let me ask, do you think that describing a flight path and assuming it's just a straight line and does not affect the people underneath is an appropriate way to select flight paths? It is not quantifiable.
Okay, you know
it's not
what?
measurable.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Let me just respond to that. Right. So, have we been dealing with noise issues for a long time or a short time?
Sure, a long time.
A really long time, right? And so, do you think that that Joe Simidian and those folks of the select committee are just going to tell the FAA, you got to do it this, and this, and the FAA is going to do right?
Congressional empowerment better than the roundtable is.
I agree.
Because they get the FAA to show up and sit down and be questioned.
But it may
They're
be
using
more-
the congressional empowerment of the committee. The roundtable is equally congressionally empowered and has the same ability to bring the FAA to the public to be held accountable.
That may be true, but I think it's more of a show than a go. Until you get to a point where there are methods to force accountability. In other words, if you don't follow the rule, what happens? If there's no penalty for an airline, an airport, or the FAA personnel, then why should they worry about it? And if there's a reward for an airline, an airport, or the FAA personnel that do hit goals, then that's a good thing. And we have neither.
What accountability and influence do the airlines themselves have in all this?
You want
They get to
to
choose
ask someone, or do you want me to?
That's a big can of worms.
Eh,
It is.
A tremendous amount.
First of all,
They have a tremendous amount of influence, and I don't see
the
that factor being
airlines,
discussed.
when it comes to, first of all, let me apologize for being late.
We had an issue in
55
town.
minutes
Yeah.
to get here from
Factors
SFO, it's
beyond your control,
ridiculous.
we heard.
Left 20 minutes ahead, GPS said, no problem, it was a problem. Anyway, as far as the airlines go, they're doing exactly what they're told and flying the procedures. Now, as far as the procedure, when it was being made, the airlines did have some input on that. The FAA took that. They took everybody's input from Brisbane before, because Brisbane had a lot of influence back in 2010 on the port departure. They did. They did.
I was part of that. No
Okay.
influence, but I
Well,
saw.
They listened. And
And
so
what was the
in
result?
trying to do an overlay with the port departure, they went ahead and made the stick, which did push traffic a little bit further north in an attempt to fly it through where the area people asked for, through the garbage dumps. But we all know that there's a band of traffic there due to the fact that it's not having to hit A, B, C, D, E going out to the coast. Those under something like that will find life absolutely miserable.
That's where we're
I
at.
mean,
That's where we're at the
I
moment.
think beyond. I truly think beyond.
No, it's not beyond miserable. Our ears aren't bleeding, but it's bad.
I'll buy that.
It's bad.
I buy that.
So to get to your question in
So
regards
airlines
to,
could not
so-
involuntarily ask for a better flight path? I mean,
So,
I understand they
yeah.
have two concerns. They have time and they have fuel.
so
Right.
you're right, and
They
when
want to get up, they want to get out of here as fast as possible.
so
Fuel's-
when they created this new system, the next gen system, and they were looking at efficiency, right? They weren't looking at reducing noise.
Right.
And so that was the driver. And because of that, and not having, not engaging communities, we've created a lot of problems. And so with the help of the congressional members, SU, Spear, and FAR, they've gotten the FAA to say, okay, maybe, we could have done it better. Okay, let's see if we can take some steps back and let's do this initiative process. And so they've been engaging us. I mean, I will agree that the FAA has not, I think, given the roundtable the respect that it should have given us in regards to public meetings. But we've also been working behind the scenes, and the roundtable is very fortunate that we get to work very close with Bert, with Kathleen Wentworth, who is a former pilot and works for Congresswoman Spear. So she's been very influential, and we also have a consultant, Cindy Gibbs from BridgeNet. And so, and then we've been taking the input from the various communities, and so where the select committee has been, more of a kind of a dog and pony show, so to speak. They're catching up to the roundtable. We've been working on things to make a difference. And so when you look at the stick, I mean, is the stick going to go away? No, it's not. And so what would make it better? And we've said, well, okay, let's move it out over the bay. Let's have greater dispersion of.
But the airlines have no interest in helping us one way or the other.
So at this point, there hasn't been the conversations with the airlines. It's been with the roundtable and the FAA, and so. But the goal is to hopefully be able to move that waypoint, continue with the dispersion, not move the waypoint and then have it, the band of flights narrow, so that then just one particular community is getting hit, all the time. That's not fair.
That needs to be in this document.
And we are,
No sacrificial corps.
We are,
because the South Bay Committee specifically said that.
And so, one of the things that, everyone, is talking about is not having a second waypoint in between a potential waypoint, having an in-between waypoint from stick and a waypoint out in the ocean, right? So heard you guys loud and clear. We'll just, wherever the planes go, and from the stick waypoint out to the port waypoint in the end will be at, I guess, the discretion of TRACON, right, so to speak.
Well, not necessarily just TRACON. It's going to also be the procedures office as well.
That's right. Okay, and that was one thing that we were going to be putting into the document, is to get to have the air traffic controllers to not get involved with telling the pilots to vector
where they don't have to.
Right, and so if we can get that waypoint out to a certain point, or we're trying to keep it on the stick where it currently is, using the system, using the automated system to fly the plane on its charted course. All right.
In terms of your fanning, I had a brief moment to look over the latest proposed response letter for these. I missed what you were saying. So that's not a proposal now. The idea of fanning and just spreading the paint.
So yeah, so we're
counter to what NextGen would want. They want it for.
And so Bert, were you able to bring that information?
That would be nice.
We didn't have all the information yet. We're still working on it. But I did bring some slides of information, what we have been able to achieve somewhat, and we're trying to ask the FAA, hey, look, today you're doing this. We'd like to see more of this. So if you could, the one, it's first one of the two, not the September data. We'll get into that one later. So in this first one, we're looking at what's known as the Candle departure out of Oakland.
Can we get those lights?
And so on the Candle departure, typically they're overflying the city of San Francisco, coming down over Brisbane and doing all sorts of different things. And we're able to find that the airlines are able to make that turn on a standard turn basis, nothing serious with banking and banking or anything crazy. But gosh, we're able to hang that left turn, go down the middle of the bay, or even overhead SFO at times. So our ask right now is, hey, thank you, we appreciate this. Can we have more of this? And so that's what we're striving towards. Next slide.
Can I ask? Can we ask a question here?
Yeah.
How do you take into account that you're flying over the least wealthy community in San Francisco at a low altitude? Is that an issue?
Hunters Point?
Hunters Point?
Well, it's actually hitting Hunters Point, Bayview, and Little Hollywood. And I have a house there, Bert.
It does overfly that.
Yeah.
Yes.
It goes right over the park.
So the question becomes, if we use Joe Smidian's criteria of level of noise,
People affected.
people affected a number of times
Frequency.
a day, why isn't Candle going straight out through the Golden Gate and then over the ocean?
Because not all of them can do that.
What in what?
How so?
How
You know
can,
why?
can you explain why not? If they can turn left like that, it sure can go and fly
It
straight.
goes straight.
Well,
It's not that they physically can't.
as they're climbing out, we have arrivals coming in. This is not showing all the tracks,
Okay.
so
Okay.
all the interactions.
I know it's more
It's a,
complicated.
it's a four-dimensional chess game, as you all know.
Yeah.
The fourth dimension being
But-
time.
But my worry, Bert, is that often that's used as an excuse not to look hard. And my worry is, and the thing is,
Well-
I've spent time with you on this.
Right.
It was you and I that discovered that over 90% of the flights off Oakland that were turned down on the Candle procedure never got to Candle. The FAA.
They turn at Lee J or before.
They turned early.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
And that is information that the FAA should have already known. If they didn't, they should have known it. And now the FAA comes back and says, oh, we'll take the 1 mile radius, and still even 50% fail.
So, Bert, did you bring a slide that, because you showed that one slide where some flights of Candle were flying out the Golden Gate.
I don't have that one specifically, no.
Okay, so that will be at the meeting on the 13th.
That's also
then.
the ask that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have with both the night, being
Okay.
able to go out and over there. Now, also too, we run into issues with the folks in Marin being ready for that shift north.
Well,
And
that's
they're
the
going
case.
Let's put a
Time
sound
out,
monitor
time
up
out.
there and
Let's
test it.
measure it then.
They're
and let's
going to,
decide
they're
what's
going to
acceptable.
say
Yeah, we're
that
gonna finish research.
much quieter up there, and here you're shifting that traffic to us, even though it is at a higher altitude.
Traffic has
It's
been
a-
shifted to us in Brisbane since
Yeah.
Next
So
Gen
I
started.
wouldn't say shifted to you.
Well,
I would
how do you
say
explain
It's increased. I
Traffic
did
has
have it before.
increased. Operations have increased.
Not
See,
that much.
The big thing is.
Not that much. Not from zero
I
to,
would like you to look
continuous.
at the operations.
Do you have that information
have-
which I asked for? Do you have the slide today?
I do have one for September data, where
Okay.
we're looking at this week, yes.
That would be great. It's quite
We'll
important.
go over that, it's rather
Okay.
interesting. Las Vegas is the number 2, behind LA.
I'd like a couple of comments. What percentage of planes can actually do that? This is what you have on the slide here.
Right now, we're looking at a low percentage, yes.
Because it looks like you're
I agree.
conflicting with a million things, incoming flights off, heading east. I don't know what altitude the blue lines are.
By the time they come by SFO, they're at 8,000-9,000 feet. So you're having the
Okay, so-
arrivals descend below them, they're above
Then you
them.
have the incoming.
When you
landing
send
flights.
them out through the gap and you send them back down, you're interfering with the bodega arrival coming in from the north.
So what
So either-
percentage do you think realistically you get to fly with getting anywhere?
It's going to be a low percentage. I'm not gonna lie.
5%,
Well,
like
yeah,
1%.
20, under
Ballpark,
30.
less than
Probably
10.
under 20.
Probably under
20%.
20.
20% or less?
Probably under 20%.
That's-
so this is minimally effective then,
No.
as a relief for sound
Yeah,
problems
a
in
lot of this
Brisbane.
is low-hanging fruit. We'll be picking and
Right, but
trying
this is
to alleviate where we
very
can.
little.
Cumulatively, it will add. Now, let's jump to the next slide real quick.
A quick question, please.
Yes,
Has there been any communication yet with the FAA controllers as regards the consequences of early turns from Candle pushing straight?
there are no consequences for them. The ask
Sorry,
is,
consequences on the ground.
consequences on the ground.
Do you mean, do they
Has
understand
anybody
what?
even mentioned it
We
to them?
give
Are they
them
aware?
feedback.
No, they said it's up.
They then take that, and the understanding is when we give them the feedback, a lot of times it's like, oh, okay, not quite aware of that one. And so that's our job to take the feedback from the community, go to the FAA, get it through the managers there. Our offer has been to go to the TRACON, and if they can get a few minutes for us to sit with the controllers during a briefing meeting or something like that, or a union meeting where they can spend a few moments for us to give them a few poignant asks.
But they've never given you that opportunity.
Well, they've said they're willing to,
But
which
they
is
haven't
good.
yet.
We've done it once.
Okay, one time.
We've done it once.
That's important for us to know.
And so that's toe in the door, Campbell's nose under the tent. We're getting someplace, and that's nice. And a lot of the controllers, when we show them things like this, they go, gosh, our maps don't show that.
Uh-huh.
I should bring you what their map looks like. It's
These
a
are
wireframe
approaches
map.
or depart, is this a reverse departure?
No.
This is a
standard
landing.
departure.
This is an approach?
Standard departure.
Okay. This is the reverse that the FAA doesn't want to do though, right? This is a reverse departure?
No, he
No.
said that's standard.
Standard runway 30 departure. From
But
a-
it's reverse operations on
No,
the,
that's north to south takeoff.
that's
right?
north to south.
Yeah,
By the
I don't
west,
think
east.
that's
Oh, this
correct.
one.
Yeah, it's
Sorry,
an
no,
arrival.
this
It's
is
an arrival.
Yeah.
Sure.
This
This
is
one-
departures.
That's
This
like
one,
arrivals.
sorry, we're changing
Yeah,
gears
yeah.
midstream with my back to the screen.
Yeah.
This is our runway 10 departures.
The
This is
reverse operation.
Preferred nighttime.
Yep.
What they call opposite
okay.
direction operations. We typically arrive on the 2/8s, and we either depart on the 1s or the 2/8s.
This is for the whole month?
This is a selection of the preferred traffic.
Yeah, okay. What's the time period?
So we're looking at 10s. 10s are at night,
Yeah.
typically,
Okay.
although there are a few
Would that be
daytimes
like
during
one
slow.
day? Would that be like one day
No, I went
representation?
and cherry picked through these.
No, I'm
So I
saying-
pulled a whole month and I whittled it down to find just these.
Oh, so this would be like an average for a month, for example?
Of good, really good.
Okay.
You're looking at the best
This is-
examples you can
And
find.
It's
so
total for the
nighttime
month.
10 departures, you were seeing as low as 2, 3, 4 on a month. So this is pretty good. This is September 2016.
I
Yeah.
will say that it has been better over this last couple of months.
Well,
That
see,
doesn't mean there are no
thank you.
bad nights. There are some that are awful. But
I'm not
because
arguing that.
overall,
There are some
at
nights
night,
where it just
been
goes
better.
down the toilet. Some of that's the controller on duty. Some of that's the winds. And some of that's just the opposite operations. Mr. Grace asked me about an operation recently. We had both San Francisco and Oakland doing what we call West Flow or standard operations. And San Jose was in reverse flow. So based on that, air traffic control kind of had to push things, keep them a little further up the bay to avoid the San Jose flow. And so that makes their life a lot more difficult when they're trying to do that. So if everything's going the same direction, it works. If everything's halfway going the same direction, you kind of got to keep things localized.
Cliff, can I make a couple of comments? Because I got interrupted on the first one I was trying to make, and the second follows in this. Is that okay? All right, first off, when we look at the height of an airplane, as I pointed out a long time ago, some of these airplanes are very quiet. They have newer engines and they're really quiet. And if they were all that way, you really could fly a whole lot of them over us and we wouldn't even know they were there half the time.
Mhm.
But that's not reality. Because reality is there are a lot of 20 and 30-year-old aircraft, or maybe even older than that, and even ones that have newer engines are noisy as hell. And part of their noise sometimes is how much they're throttling to gain altitude, and what altitude they're at, and how close they are to you. And there's all those different factors involved. What I'm seeing at my house, which is up on the Northeast Ridge, the eastern side of the mountain here, is the planes are now coming from every direction. Not all the time, not every hour, but at different times of the day, you can actually see 3 or 4 of them coming at different directions right over my house, at different altitudes, obviously. And the highest one up there, you may not be able to hear it at all because it may be up at 10 or 20,000 feet or more. But whether they're at 3,000 or 6,000, it may not make a lick of difference to us on the ground because they're so damn noisy. And of course, it also depends the direction. Where's the wind pushing the noise? But they're, like I say, they're coming over my house from the west to the east, from the east to the west, and they're coming in so low that if you were trying to paint them with a laser gun.
Don't recommend that.
I know that, but I'm saying I didn't want to use something that could actually damage an airplane. But I'm saying just for the sake of discussion, if you were measuring like with a tool that you could measure the altitude, then you'd see how low they are, and when you can almost read the plane's information with your bare eyes, that's pretty low. So I'm seeing that in 2000 when we first moved up there. They were coming on the same path, but mostly from up the bay and turning over us to the west and going back down south. That was the standard pattern. They were noisy, but they were never noisy enough to wake us up. They were never noisy enough, hardly ever noisy enough to where you couldn't have a conversation out on your deck. You'd notice it, but it wouldn't be totally drowning you out. And certainly if you were in your house with the windows open watching TV, it wasn't that big of a deal. That has completely changed. Now, they can wake you up even with the windows closed. They can rattle your windows because they're too damn low. There's so many of them coming over there that now you could be watching like the Giants are on right now. We're all sacrificing for that. And you can't hear the game sometimes. I mean, it's that loud that they're interrupting something that's already loud on your TV that you've turned up. And this is new. And the other thing that I've noticed, and I mentioned it to Peter 2 or 3 times already, is just in the past month, I've noticed days where it seemed like they turned off the airport. It's perfectly clear weather. I know planes are flying, but they're not flying over my house. I don't know where the hell they're going, but they're flying someplace else. And all of a sudden, life is beautiful. And so that's like it was when we moved in here. And then a day or two later, bam, they're right back on the other pattern, and you're back in the hell zone. That's what I'm seeing. Now, it may be that the FAA and the air traffic controllers are doing tests to see whether or not the complaints are going up and down. You're saying no. And
I can explain what's going on.
okay. Well, when I finish, I'll be happy to hear that. And so, that's what I'm sensing. And when you add the low altitude in with the mix of west to east, east to west, north to south, south to north, I mean, that's what I'm seeing. And I'm right there. The windows are right there. I'm seeing it all. It's murder. And then the people that live farther west from me, like Jay Patel and Patrick Tainer here, there were a couple days ago when I was hearing these roars, and I would look, and I can't see them to the south, I can't see them to the west, I can't see them to the north, because they're all coming from the north or the south, and they're west of me, and they're going in front of my house this way, north and south. I can't see them, but boy, could these guys hear them, and they were driving me nuts. Am I right? So that's what I'm saying. So when people say elevation or altitude is the solution, everybody knows that's part of it. If you can get them up to 30 or 40,000 feet, yeah, that's fine. But that's not practical.
Not for everybody.
Yeah, but that's not practical in the close-in environment that we're working here with the airport. So distance has to be the issue. Thank you for listening.
The days you're talking about being good, your neighbors to the south are suffering. South San Francisco, Daly City, Pacifica, Coloma, all those cities, San Bruno, because we're in typically what's called a west plan, all west plan, meaning the winds are so heavy out of the west that we can't use the ones. We have to go out on the 2.8s and arrive on the 2.8. So everything's going east-west, runways, or all west actually. And so with those type of operations, yes, you definitely get a respite, but the city south get pounded.
Right.
South San Francisco in particular, because not only do they have the straight out, but they also have the tight right turn. Some of those go a little wide and they'll pop over the mountain here, and folks will experience that. But we've been working hard with the airlines on that tight right turn. Typically they're doing pretty good with it. Our numbers are showing that we're really doing pretty good and working with them on that one. But these are actually effective at night for alleviating the over the peninsula turns. And so this is one of our big asks and our big push is as many tents as possible.
I
tens
thought
being
there
to
were
the east.
difficulties with this. First,
There
the
are,
FAA don't
because you have
like
the
it,
arrivals coming
and
in.
then you had a very
from
low wind speed
the 2/8s.
tolerance, right?
You have three
3
things
knots or
going on.
something?
You have to have a 3,000 foot seal. You have to have less than 10 knots of tailwind.
10 knots.
And you have to have 20
20
miles
miles.
of separation
Mhm.
for the air traffic controllers to even begin pointing
Mhm.
airplanes at each other. Goes less than that, can't do it.
Yeah, so there's not going to be a lot of departures with
correct.
that.
Right,
So,
right.
During
so
the
Bert, I mean,
typically
so,
they tend not, it's,
Occasionally.
yeah.
During
Once in a
real
while
low
you get
period.
it. Once
so Bert, if you wouldn't mind going into some of the things that we're going to be showing,
Yes.
you know, for the meeting on the
Next slide.
13th. I'd like to get into some of the
So
solutions.
these are our positives. So-
Can we focus on the stick thing?
Yeah, is there
Can
going to be a
we-
stick?
That's
Let him
the
get
big,
there.
that's 80% of Brisbane's
Yeah,
complaint,
but let
Well-
him get there.
These are in lieu of doing the stick.
all right?
Oh, good.
This is
So-
a fix.
A 10 departure, we don't do the stick.
But that's only at night. The
Okay.
6
Is that
to
a
6
problem?
a.m. to 10 p.m. is
Is that a
80% of the.
No,
No, but we
Loading
discussed
and
this all in the
Another
last
at
one.
night is a 050 departure down the bay.
But we covered this in the last workshop, right?
Okay.
We're all on the same,
So,
we're all in agreement with you. This
We're
is good.
asking the FAA, since they can do these, do more please.
Yeah,
Do not do stick.
Right.
So these are in lieu of doing the
And
stick.
was the FAA asked to do that at your meeting 2 weeks ago?
Definitely was.
And what was their response?
We're looking
Yeah.
to do it. We're seeing if we can do that more. The TRACON has already said, yes, we'll do this to the extent possible. So these are all positives
That's
in
good.
lieu of the stick.
Do they have the authority to force the airlines to do this after certain hours? Or is it
Typically-
entirely voluntary to what the airline wants to do?
Typically, a pilot will take what he's given. I'm a private pilot. Air traffic control asks me to do something, I'm gonna do it.
But I thought the airlines have the flight planning
They
department,
will
right?
have a
And they're the
flight
ones who
planning
hand it to the
department that will
pilot, right?
file for the stick departure. On the way out, the air traffic control tower will say,
You're going here.
would you accept a 050 departure to your first transition?
Okay.
And most pilots will quickly say, roger that, unless they see a problem with it. Ultimately, the pilot in command is the pilot
Sure.
in command of that ship.
Has to be,
Yeah.
of course.
And he can say, no, I'd rather take the stick departure, at which point air traffic control will say, clear is requested, or please hold.
So
And they may
I
park
asked-
them in the holding
I asked the
box.
question earlier, what influence does the airlines have, what accountability do they have? And you just said a moment ago that most airlines are following their flight plans according to the stick.
Yes.
That's the charted
That's the
procedure.
charted
On their
procedure.
own.
So
Or,
who can go to the airlines? Because when I track on the software that I've been given,
Mhm.
it says what airline is over my house, 8 times out of 10 it's Virgin America.
Mhm.
So who goes to the airlines and say, gentlemen, ladies,
I've been working with the airlines myself.
and what have they been saying?
Generally speaking, the engineer I've been working with for their flight procedures department is very helpful. And he's of the opinion, yes, we'll do what we're asked. So when we ask them to take the 050s, they say, sure.
Do you have metrics that can tell us now how many flights are now taking this departure as opposed to, say, a year ago coming over Brisbane?
Definitely this has increased highly. As
You
far
got
as
actual
we're looking at
numbers.
at night, I would say probably 15% increase over last year. I need to get the exact numbers. But generally speaking, that's what we're seeing.
Sorry, one definition question. When you say at night, is 6 a.m. at night?
6 a.m. is the end of night.
That's why they all start coming over us.
See,
Yeah, 'cause I
a
don't need
lot
an
of
alarm clock
these
anymore.
are contingent upon the ability to go and use these routes, meaning San Jose's under their curfew. They're able to do it because they're going that way. Oakland, the FedEx traffic has pretty much ceased, and they're now transitioning over to the passenger traffic at that time of day. And also SFO's traffic push is increased at that time of day too. So the 6 a.m. push is much like jumping on the 101. I mean, gosh, if you get out there at 5 a.m., you can go crazy.
Jim, you had a question?
You hit it at 6,
I was just
it's
curious,
busy.
Have you looked at the metrics that Oakland uses? there? in
Some,
North
we're mainly trying to focus on SFO.
Because something that came up, I just started looking at that, it's sort of interesting the way they do things. It's a little different, and I guess every airport monitors its noise and deals with its issues differently. And it seemed to me like they were, in terms of the pilots, we were talking about pilot and airline discretion, I think they categorize them as a group. Not rank them, but keep track, grade them, and then, if you look at the details of like pilot decision, and they put it in red and the pilot.
It depends on the procedure, yes. They have one
They keep
procedure that
track
they
of
look
that
at,
stuff.
and that's a right turn off of 30 over Alameda and Bay Farm. So they have so few of those that they're able to go and individually track down each individual flight and
Seems like
say,
they do that, yeah.
hey, we had 5 that turned right this month.
It's a pretty long appendix of all of lights.
Right, 5 to 15 typically. And so when you're looking at 5 to 15 flights, it's pretty easy to track.
No, I was looking at that, it's a quarterly report, so.
Right, so we're looking at 5 to 15 a month. And so I've talked with Jesse about that, and formerly Larry, who used to be the noise abatement officer there. And so that's relatively easy to track when you have that few flights doing something like that.
Bert, along the lines of that last question, is it possible for SFO to speak with the people at Google or Facebook or one of these other billion-dollar corporations that have computer people coming out of their pores and have them write a program for the airport so that they can grade all of these factors, so you don't have to write a program from scratch? Is it possible to get some other help?
Yes, we have Brulin Care's ANOM system, and those folks are willing to help us use our system better. The one thing we're actually finding is, due to the fire hose of data that we're now getting, both complaints and flight track data. Our flight track data, with the inclusion of the Santa Cruz area and also the FAA's NOP data, National Offload Program. We went from the ARTS data, which is the local radar over, actually it's at Oakland Airport, believe it or not, right on the bay. The volume of our data increased, so say we were getting 10 megabits of data a day, we're now getting 25 to 30, due to the fact that we've had to go out to 100 nautical miles to be able to view all these flight tracks. And so that volume of data has really hogtied us. And what we're finding is we had to go to another piece of software called Tivoli. And we're just now, Tableau, sorry, not Tivoli, Tableau. And with Tableau, you can use massive amounts of data. All you have to do is just organize it, shove it into it, and then you can analyze. So I have 2 Cracker Jack people in my office that have been through the training already. And so we're doing it ourselves, yes,
But it's a matter of time, is what you're saying.
but we have a sweet tool now.
Okay.
So we're able to do it faster than we have been. And yes, we can analyze better. Yes, sir.
So do you have the picture of the stick, or a map of the stick that's being flown right now?
I have a slide. I think it's not the next one. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. That one.
Oh.
Yeah. So this is roughly the stick doing an offshore. And the old offshore departure would go across the peninsula and stay offshore, giving the folks Pacific and Daly City, all those cities down south, a break.
Yes.
Still coming across the peninsula, no doubt about it, and no argument there.
But can you just tell us, when you show us these slides, can you tell us what percentage they are compared to the total flights of sticks? Is this 5%, 1%, 0.5%?
This would probably be, of a monthly, we're probably looking at 1 to 2%.
Okay, very small. Very
It is.
small.
Yeah, but the reason why the slide's here is to show the FAA, we want the planes to make that turn, have the dispersion, and then go to the ocean, right? So we know that the FAA has done it. So we need to have it on a more consistent basis, right?
So I agree with that. So I agree. Good reason. Good
Where
reason. That
can
makes
you-
sense.
Where's Brisbane exactly on that map?
It's under all that green stuff.
You
Yeah,
can
under
see
all the
the
green
southern
stuff,
end of
right.
Brisbane right there at the edge.
See the yellow?
See where the
Right on the
little
edge of
triangle
it.
is?
Well, Bert, when I look at that departure or that procedure
Right on the
there,
edge of the green
what
stuff, aren't we?
I'm seeing is that they're pointed out from the runway, they're pointed out to the northeast. But then they don't go very far offshore into the middle of the bay
No,
before they cut that turn.
that's correct.
And the farther out they go into the middle of the bay before they cut the turn, the more elevation they're going to have before they come over land.
No argument there. There is an issue with it, though.
Okay, well, there always is.
So they're shooting for the stick waypoint. And when I looked at the stick waypoint, I was asked to see how far out right now, and I showed some of these with Cliff, how far out to the northeast are these flights able to go? And there's almost a hard line at 0.6 of a mile past stick. So it's almost religion. You don't see them go any further east.
Is that where
Is
Septi was?
That's because of the
Is that where
conflict with
Septi-
Oakland.
Oakland.
Yeah.
Isn't that where Septi used to be, almost 6 times over?
No, actually, Septi is a little closer in and
And further
further
north.
north. Just
How
by,
about- how about-
it's like an 1/8 of a mile. Was it 1/8 of a mile up, 1/8 of a mile over?
I disagree,
They're
but
pretty
when I've
close.
looked at them using the coordinates you've given me, there was half a mile. Styx was half a mile
Okay.
from Septi. So in other words, it went from originally Septi was the 4 DME, and now Styx is 3.5.
Okay.
But
So,
if you
I won't
were
argue.
to take that a half a mile further northeast
So
before
then
they
you start-
turned, how do you think that might translate into altitude when they come back over land? Maybe a mile high? I mean, maybe 3,000 or 4,000
It really
feet high?
depends on the heading they're given after.
Right.
Because if you imagine a point in space and you're sending flights through it, but you run them further east and then come, they're going to go direct overhead Brisbane possibly. So it's going to pivot depending on what you're doing. And so if you don't tell them heading after that, you may find that you get everything direct overhead.
Right. Okay.
I'm
That's a good point.
cautious of what we ask for.
Yeah, that's a good point. But that's part of what makes this thing so
Right.
complicated.
It is. And so, again, be careful what we ask for. I have to say over and over and over again. Can we go to the next slide real quick?
When you talk about the 0.6 of a mile to the northeast seems to be a hard line, that's not very much room to be able to move
No.
stick if the FAA were to even consider it,
Yes.
right?
I agree.
Well, I mean, Bert's entitled to his opinion. I mean,
I-
I'm trying,
No, but I'm
you know,
just-
that isn't what I'm shooting for. I want to
1,000
see
an hour,
it
that's-
as far east as possible. There are some restrictions, for sure. But I want the FAA to tell me what the restrictions are.
Okay.
So that then we can identify where it's not restricted and put the waypoint at that
We
location.
agree with that.
If I can, not to beat a dead horse, but we're talking mechanics and each point we're talking about the three questions that were raised need to have equal value in this equation. What is the effect of the sound on the people who live here? Period. You know, we're rearranging deck chairs here on the Titanic. Okay? We do have a solution. It's viable. It's visible. It's the water. And until that is a baked-in component of how they make a flight decision, we are going to fight this every flight. That's my opinion. I mean, the more I look at this, the
Yes.
more confused I become. The issue is the sound on the people below. And that has to have an equal place in the criterion of what the FAA makes a decision on, because it affects human lives.
Well, it's not a short-term thing. You should be talking to your local ecological groups and getting noise pollution added to their list.
Well, but
Because long-term, that's going to be a
Congress, when they
part of the
passed
solution.
the act back in 1990 or whatever it was, specifically mandated the FAA to include noise and environmental concerns in their planning. They did that. That's in writing. I read it. That's in the federal law. The problem is the FAA never had that mandate before, didn't have any ability to do that, didn't have any organization to do that with. Unless they bought it and built it, they may not have it today.
Well, Congress didn't fund it.
Yeah.
Or
So,
defund
you
it.
know,
That's
so
another
John, I
issue.
mean, I totally agree with you,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I know.
what we are dealing with is a quality of life issue, a health issue, and that is the perspective that we take. Unfortunately, you know, when they did the environmental assessment for the next gen system, they said there was when they did the environmental impacts, they said it was a FONSI, right? Findings of no significant impact,
Our favorite.
right? And so they're under the understanding that they're okay, right? But we know that's not true. I mean, we're the ones that are dealing with it, and so then it's like, okay, what can we do, right? And we also have to remember that the window to act is that window's going to close. Right, and so
we're not being aggressive enough in the solutions we're seeking. That the roundtable is seeking.
And so when you look at the 4 things that we can do, right, and so but I hear what you're saying about being aggressive. Let me just finish though, John. Is that in the last conversation that I had with the FAA and Bert was there too? They're saying like you're asking for too many things. You need to refine what you want, and we have these 4 items, and the 2 at night, trying to get the candle to perhaps do that procedure. But I have the same concerns that all of you have. Is that are we going to limit the stick's ability to get farther east? Because that is the procedure that causes the most impacts for us. Not so much the candle. So we're also looking at having the candle fly out the Golden Gate. That might be more of a nighttime issue, but Bert has shown, has provided flight track data that shows the planes can do it during the daytime too. And so by having those visuals with our ask, again, what the FAA is going to do is really a voluntary thing. They're not under any pressure or whatever.
They are under congressional pressure.
No, yes. No, but then they will come back. So we have to really make sure that what we present works with their system.
I have a question then. So I heard today Huerta, FAA chief, announced the opening of an $80 million, 50-foot taller control tower for the airport. I'd like to know what the acceptable decibel level is to work in that building.
Mm-hmm. John,
I'd like to know if it was baked into the engineering, because I'm certain it was.
I supplied all the equipment in the ATC tower. I did that. I got the plans in my office right now. If you want to see
And
the
you bought
plans,
your house on the ridge with the money.
I've been in that building. I saw planes flight. It is quiet. In fact, the equipment I sold was too noisy for the FAA. I had to swap it out. The acoustics inside the cab.
I think that's what I'm trying to say here. There is a precedent for evaluating noise in the workplace for the FAA employees.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So we're equal to them as citizens.
No.
No.
Yes, we
Yes,
are.
we are. Actually, we're not, because we actually pay their salary.
Right.
At
But my
12:30
point is-
a.m. in the morning, my fantasy is to put a speaker in the bedroom of every child of every FAA employee and make sure they hear what I hear.
That's a good
Right, but I'm
fantasy.
just asking the question, have they addressed sound in their own buildings and airports? And if they have,
Sure.
okay, it's time to bring it out here. That's my
We sell
point.
equipment.
Yes.
Yeah,
you're talking about-
that stuff.
You're
Yeah.
talking about
I-
fairness.
There's a slide I wanted to point to now, but.
Which one did you want?
Please. I think their OSHA regulations, they're looking at one point, it was like sustained for 80, it's not that low.
Right, it's pretty high,
Is it?
and to measure it, they put a decimeter on you. You run around, do your daily tasks, and if it's above a certain level, then of course they need to provide you earplugs or.
Well, they can't do it for the controllers, and a lot of us that work from home during the day need to concentrate during the day, and a lot of businesses aren't outside physically doing things. So I gotta believe that the controllers, the very heart of it, don't hear what a lot of ambient white noise.
There's some.
So I'm just saying, if they have even thought of it and put it into a building specification, it is time to be brought here. I'm just saying, it's not fair.
It's not fair. But life isn't fair.
Can I get a point? While we're here and talking about over water, I just want to make my point about the Golden Gate. As you were saying, over water, and Peter's point about these people impacted, who's going to impact how many. And to me, I said this before, common sense, what I'd like to see out of this is the open flights through the Golden Gate as much as possible. I see the planes. I understand there's interfering traffic, but most of those, I believe, are 10 or 11,000 general. And I like the hairpin turn, although it'd be best to avoid Hunter's Point, but that doesn't seem like the bulk of the flights. The bulk, and would be less interference for the stick flights if you get these planes going out. You got the marine headlands. I mean, I think the amount of, and you got attenuation generally, not always by the water that's flying. So it seems like the least impact, and I don't know how much noise shifting or how much it's going to be, but it would be sensibly to fly out to the ocean and head down the coast instead of flying these planes over a city with 1 million people. It's nonsensical, and the airlines can come up with their reasons of why they want to do that. Mostly, I imagine it would be fuel savings, because I don't see a massive safety situation, maybe sometimes, but like, I haven't heard a good reason. You can keep the planes, I would imagine, 8,000 feet over the Golden Gate, marine headlands. It might impact the people that are trying to enjoy the marine headlands, but it's not over people's house. So the most sensible least people impacted would be to go out over the ocean instead of over a city. And that's going to leave the flights coming out of the stick a lot more latitude to do that and disperse and everything else. You're not going to have that conflict. And I would recommend that as
absolutely, and that's what we got to do. Absolutely.
That's a good point.
Well, it's open and it's a little bit more fuel, but it's over water and not over people's homes.
Yes. Yeah. And
And it's doable. It's massive areas, it's a ton of
I had Bert pull just a 15-minute or 20-minute segment in the morning, and because I saw this I was walking the dog. There was looked like candle flight and a stick flight, like they were going to hit each other. It's one of those, where they crisscross, and it was very interesting to see that most of the candle flights, they wouldn't even go up to LJ. They would cut LJ short, and they would go straight across San Francisco. And, and just and Bert's been getting hammered with complaints that come out of San Francisco, like, hey, why are all these candle lights?
So the FAA.
So what we have is this. And we've talked about it before, is that there's this culture within the air traffic controllers.
The FAA got Mindy Wright got up and said, we in the FAA recognize this as a problem and we are going to fix it. She got up and she said that. That was 2 months ago now? Mm-hmm. How long does it take to go back on a procedure that's already established? This is not acceptable.
They
and
told
the
us
Roundtable should not accept this as an excuse from them.
Yeah, I don't know if she said that to that particular procedure.
They gave that little presentation at the same time when United Airlines came with their vortex generator.
And the FAA did say specifically, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard them say was if they want to go back and use an existing procedure where no changes need to be made, they said all that is, it just requires issuing their order for the day or the week or whatever that regular procedure comes out.
And we, the Roundtable is definitely pushing for those short term.
I think you need to be really
solutions.
tough on them. They
absolutely, and so
we're going to do this. Where is it?
So we're in that process. Trying to boil down that document so that it is as effective as possible.
This is a perfect question for who's coming. Don Kimby, Kirby. If he's in TRACON, why haven't you done this? TRACON's the one directing these flights, right? This is the perfect thing to ask him on Thursday night.
Absolutely. For sure.
By the way, Cliff, the comment that you made about where you saw those two flights going and you saw them coming over San Francisco, our second house is in Little Hollywood, right across the Brisbane border, right next to Candlestick, where Candlestick Park used to be. And I'm sitting there working on my house and working in my backyard, and they're coming over there just as bad or worse than they're hitting Brisbane. And I know that there are a few people there on Nextdoor.com that were complaining about it, but I don't think they're as organized as we have been and others have been down the peninsula. Unfortunately, I was hoping maybe someone would be here. But I can speak for them to say that it is really hitting that neighborhood hard. Is it bothering anybody? I would venture to say it's bothering fewer people over there, even though it's a lower income neighborhood, because the ambient noise there is generally much higher than Brisbane, way higher. And except for when you go up on the hills, then you get the exact same problem that we have in Brisbane for all of us that are on the hills, the sound hits them differently because you have a valley there, you have a valley on Valley Drive, you have another valley or bowl in central Brisbane. And every place where there's a valley, you get that reverberation of sound.
All right, so Jay?
All right, so let me go through it. I've been quiet during the last workshop. I didn't speak much. And one of the objectives for this workshop was to dive into the details of the 2010 data and 2015 data at the Ridge. So let's go backwards a little bit. So I've lived at the Ridge since 2002. And I'm quite aware of my surroundings, quite aware of acoustics. I deal with it at work and stuff, and so I'm pretty cognizant of it. This all started at the Ridge. I can pinpoint the time frame because it was 2014 World Series, Game 6, and I flew down to SoCal, San Diego, and that Virgin America flight flew right over my house. And right prior, leading up to that, I have the time reference, right? October, World Series, Game 6. So I knew it. I go, hey, these fights have been hitting my house. It started around then, in the fall of 2014. Maybe the procedure, SEPTI didn't get moved to stick until January 2015. I guarantee you, fights started flying over my house. Prior to that, I moved up to the new house in 2008. Never heard a peep. Windows open all year round, nothing. All I hear is birds and crickets and whatever you're supposed to hear from San Bruno. So living at the Ridge since 2002, right? So the shift happened, and it's a shift. And I want to acknowledge it's a shift of noise. Because the roundtable keeps saying there's no shift.
You know, I want to say there's definitely been an
A
increase.
shift in noise.
Hey, Jay,
Flat out shift.
but you're right, but you know that shift all came from the south.
Let me
But
finish.
you know where it came from, and you know.
It doesn't matter. Let me finish.
Let him
All right, I've been pretty quiet for the last two workshops, so I like to say my piece.
Okay.
And it's important that the shift thing gets acknowledged, that shifting, it's gonna have to happen again, right? Because it got shifted in many communities, hence the reason why this initiative took place. Everyone's, the outcry of the community, Santa Cruz, for example, us, I mean, new communities got shifted by their next-gen procedures
Mhm.
without any forewarning to the communities, without taking into account health effects and quality of life and stuff. So I gave the analogy during the city council meeting. If you buy your house next to a railroad track, you kind of get what you pay for. So this historical flight data, where flights used to go, them bought their homes and whatever, settled where they wanted to settle.
And additional
When-
comments
when
on
they
that,
shift-
They got money.
So when I purchased my house and set up roots and did what I needed to do in Brisbane, and then they put the railroad track right next to my house, I mean, it becomes a problem. And that's basically what they've done. They shifted noise. So 2010 data said about 38 flights per day average on a 2-week period. It was tolerable. I lived there, never heard a peep, all is good. In 2015, at any given day, we're up to 200 flights a day. I mean, that is a problem. That's a quality of life. That is not what I signed up for. And that's why this initiative exists. So it's the procedure itself. None of the language in the FAA initiative talks, fly the procedure, fly the stick procedure. Guess what? That stick procedure is over my bloody house. It's over the Ridge, it's over Brisbane. If you fly stick, the normal procedure is over our town.
Yep.
It got shifted to the north, or wherever it got shifted, period. You can say what you want. I know what happened, it got shifted. And so when you say fly the procedure, guess what? That's more flights over my house. So, and we talk about vectoring as the issue. Well, guess what? It's not really vectoring. It's stick procedure is the real problem. I'm sure there's a domino effect from candle vectors, but stick, it's the procedure. It's the procedure that's the bloody problem. When it went from SEPTI to stick, that is when the Ridge got nailed. And 200 flights a day at any given day, it's really not what we signed up for. Every 2 minutes to 1 minute, 3 minutes, I mean, it happens. It happens often. We're talking about our health, we're talking about our property values, this is not what we signed up for.
If you could go
And
back
so
to
this
SEPTI,
language
what
doesn't,
happens?
this language in here doesn't really reflect and identify the problem at the Ridge and all of Brisbane. Vectoring is what southern Brisbane and central Brisbane, mostly those were the vector flights over the last decade in issues, where they weren't flying the SEPTI according to procedure, and those were vector flights. I get it. I get it that you guys were getting nailed. I work in Brisbane too since '95, so I get it. And so it's a problem. Like, it's the procedure that's a problem, and the FAA changed it. So we asked in the last city council meeting, can we go back to SEPTI? Nothing's happened. If they go back to SEPTI, FAA needs to share that. That's a procedure, it's already there. So share that with us and tell you, you're going back to more historical data. So historical flight paths. I mean, those guys.
So yeah, and so in regards to, do you have that data that just kind of shows those noise disturbances that were created when?
With me today.
No.
The one thing I did want to ask is, when the ask is to go back to SEPTI, is it just to use SEPTI on the stick versus stick? Or is it to go back to the port?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So back in 2010, so after they flew SEPTI, what was the next waypoint that they had to go? Was it more of a lateral move to the ocean, or did they cut over Pacific?
They were given a heading.
Okay.
So, leaving SFO, turn left heading, once
They got this certain
over
altitude.
1,600 feet, turn left heading 200.
Okay. So we weren't
And
getting pounded. We did get some flights based on 2010
chart's
data.
going to say,
We got
head
some.
towards SEPTI, and then when they get from air traffic control, leaving 1,600, turn left heading 200. Well, they're not to SEPTI yet, but they hit 1,600, so off they go.
One more piece of historical data.
We have a map
Back in the
of
early
flight tracks under
1980s,
SEPTI. They're spread all
I
across
worked
the
with
country.
somebody who was living in San Bruno, very close to the airport. And at the time that the airport suddenly substantially ramped up their flights, which were heading out right over San Bruno, and I guess that would be the 05? No, it's further over, the 28? I'm trying to figure out which runway it is.
28 straight out through the gap.
It was basically heading
It goes over
West,
Tanforan.
west northwest, yeah.
So west.
That's
Yeah.
That'd be 28.
Right. She lived under that flight path, and when they suddenly ramped up operations on that, one of the things they did was to offer something like 50 to 70,000 for every homeowner under that flight path, because basically they were doing a taking. She got 50,000 when she bought that house. She was fine with it because she was deaf, so she didn't care if the noise was you know. But the point is that back when the airlines did a major taking at that time, they also gave fiscal recompense to the people who had been worst affected. Now, I don't actually want any money. I want my piece of quiet back.
I didn't answer your
But
question.
frankly, this is another major taking.
Yes.
The reason why I think I go back to SEPTI, because I don't know, I mean, that's what I know when things were better. My quality of life is better. So that is the reason why I say go back to SEPTI. I just want things to go back to what it pre-next gen.
They were.
I mean, quite frankly, that is
Basically, you ask
all,
them to go back to port.
I want, before the FAA screwed it up, that's what next gen did. Everyone acknowledges it. That's why the lawsuit in Phoenix, lawsuit in Palo Alto. I mean, they changed the game. They impacted communities. They impacted their health. I mean, it's not what.
You know, and I just, I agree with you with some of it, but you know, Central Brisbane was not a great place to be with airplane noise prior to next gen. So.
You were here in Central Brisbane at that time, and you thought SEPTI was better.
We were the only ones at the meetings.
I'm sorry?
It's way worse.
No, Jim and I used to be at the meetings, what, 5 years
It was
ago?
bad in 2010.
Yeah, so,
No,
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying it
So,
wasn't
We were
bad.
in 2007, and we started going to meetings after that because we're way up on Margaret, and it was a nightmare.
I don't know what it was, you know, I can look, I haven't really noticed, it's still pretty bad, maybe a little better, but the traffic's not.
yeah, and I, you know, I don't want to get us into a thing like, okay, it's worse here or that. You know, we don't want to do that.
No.
Well, again, getting to where you were before,
Yes.
that, you know, let's have greater dispersion. You know, let's use the bay better than what the FAA is currently doing, and that means, you know, don't do the
6/10 of a mile
shortcuts.
isn't going to do it.
Well, we got to see how far we can go, right? I mean, if you use SEPTI as that point, you know, kind of getting to where Bert's coming from, I don't, if they're flying close to the shore or they're vectoring prior to SEPTI, just because you said let's use SEPTI, I don't see us really making a difference, right?
Disagree.
Well, you know,
So try it.
you know what? That's not gonna fly with the FAA. They have this window open for a short period of time. They're telling us,
So-
where do you want that waypoint?
Please,
And
please.
so let me just finish. So we can keep the waypoint closer to Brisbane, or we can move it further east over the water. And so that's what I hope that we can do. But once that happens, you know, the FAA is not going to, you know, be I mean, you already know how responsive they are to begin with. They're not going to say, you know, after, you know, a few months, you know, we're not going to be able to go back to them and say, yeah, you know, they're just not that type of organization. So we got to really understand
We should not
where
make
these.
excuses for them. We should not.
You know what? Here's the thing. I want to try and get results, and I don't want to just like try and win the argument with them. I want to try and get something staked in the water
Phoenix
where the
has
planes
gone
are
down
flying.
this road. Phoenix has gone down this road, and the FAA saying the same thing, strung them along just like us, and then at the end of the day said, oh, we really can't do anything. So what did Phoenix do? They completely stopped all next-gen there. Why? Because Phoenix said, enough. And they filed a lawsuit. And there is enough of a groundswell occurring right now along the entire peninsula that that's where the FAA is going to get to here as well.
Yeah, that's
We
not
should
what
not be
this is.
making.
Yeah, no, you know what? I hear what you're saying, and you know, when Phoenix is
And they are
Phoenix,
definitely
right? And
afraid.
we're a town of 4,300 people. Not to say that we should, you know, cave
I'm
or
not
anything
talking
like
about
that,
Brisbane, I'm talking about the
right?
entire peninsula.
I think he's talking about a class action.
Well, you know, maybe that's what it'll have to be. You know, at that time.
Nobody
you know,
wants
we're-
that, so let's give
Right,
the FAA
I-
real solutions that give us real relief.
Absolutely, and I
Not
totally agree
moving
with you.
0.6 of a mile, that still ends up over us.
Did I say that? I'm saying
No,
let's
they
move
have-
that waypoint, you know, as
This
far
was
east
septic.
as possible.
This is
This is, I don't know what time frame this is.
This was-
They're
this was
spanned
2011.
all the way across, all the way across. They're not on Brisbane is not a sacrificial railroad.
this was work that we got from Bert, and I can explain what happened.
Here's Stick,
Peter,
here's Septic.
It doesn't look like Can we turn off the overhead?
It isn't
Well,
much.
I can't
Yeah,
see.
well,
This
this
is
is
about an
different.
eighth of a
Yeah,
mile.
but this is,
quarter mile.
I know,
So
I'm
was
just
part
going
of it
for,
the route thereafter?
for my quality of life, I pay attention, so I know pre-septi versus stick, and I just know what happened. We started getting pounded, and that never happened.
Well, it's not just the initial
So-
waypoint, it's where do they go from there?
Well, yes.
Yes,
Yeah, that
that's
was part
right,
of it.
that's right.
The procedure differences are for the stick. You take a left to heading 014, achieve stick, and then you're going to be turned. As far as SEPTI on the port, you achieved heading 050, closer in, and then SEPTI, and then brought over.
So one farther to the north then.
So it's a difference of this, a little bit.
I never heard of planning before, so.
A
whatever that was,
great
just
deal of
whatever-
dispersion. Yes, very concentrated coming off the runway, over the water, and then as it comes across, here's Brisbane right here, it's all dispersed.
But what I'm noticing.
It's all dispersed. There's no sacrificial runway, railroad track, or whatever you want to
Patrick,
call it, that we
the
have
thing that bothers
today.
me is I'm looking at that picture that I have here, and when I look up in the sky, what I see right now is a broad dispersion now, and they're all louder. And I think it's because they're lower, but I'm not positive about that.
I think that's part of
Let's go
it.
to the PowerPoint, September 20.
You know, before you go back to that, just stay right here just a second.
How
So,
come they
Bert,
can't fly over to tie-dye?
So, Bert,
And then
this-
make their turn?
this thing right
Why can't
here,
they go
is
to
this the,
tie-dye and
um,
then make their turn?
Is that the night? Is that the track that the night
track
would be
for
on?
the night
The question there
is
is
going to
a
come
question,
off,
but that's the
go to
question.
mid-bay,
Do they run into interference when
and
you get
then
too far
up.
to the east?
And then,
nights on.
okay, so
So here's Hush, that's
Yeah.
kind of close. So if they go mid-bay and then Hush or night and then on up, that would be what we're looking
okay,
at.
so the FOBOT, what is that? FOBOT? FOBOT?
Phobe?
Boba?
FOBOT? Okay, so that is already a
It is a waypoint.
it is a
I don't know what
waypoint.
it's attached
Okay.
So this could be other airports.
Okay, but I mean, one of the things that we have talked about is like using gobs, which is on the left-hand side, you can see part of it, right, for candle departures. You know, you go out the Golden Gate, use that waypoint that's already in existence, and then head down to Port, which is further south,
And then out.
Yes.
right?
Basically, we would take a
Yes.
candle right here, allow it to fly further up, and then out.
So one of the things I'm going to try and ask for is, well, okay, granted, I don't know if this is feasible or not, but I'm going to ask it, and try real hard to see if we can get it, since it already exists. Maybe you go out to Phobot, or you go out to the
Or
Sass
even
Lake.
Mid-Bay or tie-dye.
Remember, there's other, there's the flights that are heading,
Gainmore?
that are going east, right? Then you have the parallel
Conflicting.
departures, right? You got, just like you see the two planes coming in, two planes going out, right? So you need to have that
Guys, may I
15
speak,
degree
please?
of.
I think I've been patient. I've been.
Okay, yeah, all right.
I would just like to say I appreciate all the effort, but the whole process isn't really instilling a lot of confidence in me, okay? I feel like I've been damaged. The noise is a lot worse. I have multiple flights going right over my head, and I hear a lot of analysis that seems really largely arbitrary and very subjective. And I think we should adhere to proper standards, industry standards. I don't think any of us here, with the exception of Bert, possibly really understand this stuff. It's not making me feel confident. All I know is I want to be made whole. I feel like I've been damaged. I'd like it to return back to normal. That's what I know. I don't know if we pick another alternate point, if that's going to fix the problem. I feel like this is a forced compromise. I don't like this arbitrary framework. It's like you're asking me, we got to cut off a leg. Which one do you want to cut off, your right or your left? That's not okay with me. So, and I don't want to litigate and sue anybody, but before I cut a leg off, I would rather sue somebody, okay? I do agree with Peter that we should use his criteria because it directly affects us, and we should know how many people are being affected. That's the criteria. That's the problem. If we still don't fix that at the end of the day, we're still going to have the same problem. So I very much support what Peter and Patrick said, and I think that this running around in circles is not going to be productive. We're just going to end up litigating. That's where this is going to go.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So trying to get something out here instead of so close here. Again, these planes, the stick it's going to fly here and it's going to come across.
Why?
And so
Why?
Just say
Under
no.
these objective criteria,
let's-
let's go and look
You
at
know
the
what?
number of
Completely
people
think
affected.
outside the box.
Okay,
Why
so
does it have
why?
to do that?
Why, Cliff?
Okay,
Not
so
because it's always been done that way. That's not a valid argument.
okay, so then where would they go? Right? So then they would all come out here, right? Or we would take them here and we come across here. So you're going to shift the noise somewhere, and if you kept the planes in here, there's just too much traffic. And
How do you know? How do you know?
Because this is what the FAA has said.
Well,
I
let's
mean,
get the FAA here in a meeting, as we
answer
had
it.
in the South Bay arrivals,
Okay.
a public forum where they're asked.
Hey,
And
Peter,
I
you
find
know
it
what?
very, very
I hear. I hear where you guys are coming from, and I, look,
Why
I
has it
am.
happened?
You know what, Peter? If I ask for this with the FAA, they're going to turn their backs on us, right? And so
I think that you have.
you know what? And then you're entitled to your opinion. But I've dealt with these people for the last several years.
It's not a small
And
negotiation.
it is, and so we have to look at, okay, within this flight procedure, what can we possibly get? And that is to fly the planes over the water a little bit longer, get them a little bit higher, and just have a fair share of where those planes go when they go over land. I don't know what else I could do to make anything better, and even with that, I got a tough battle ahead of me, and I don't know if they're going to agree. So, but the last thing we should be doing is fighting amongst ourselves. We need to work together.
In the FAA initiative, they said changing the altitude at Menlo is not feasible.
This page here, very first thing on this.
Not feasible. At the select committee meeting, they were hammered and questioned, and Glenn Martin came away from that and said, we will look at this again. There are other things that they can do using other waypoints out in the bay to raise the altitude at Menlo. When they are pressed, this is on arrival, so it doesn't affect us. But they said not feasible, and then all of a sudden, when they are pressed in a public forum, and it's obvious that the community is not going to accept what is a lame excuse, they are able to come up with a solution.
Okay, Bert, can you,
These
can
guys
you
know how
provide
to do this.
some insight to
I've
that?
actually attended the select committee meetings.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, they have a takeaway to look at it again.
Yes.
Realistically, the promise, you're going to look at it.
Okay.
I think it's akin to somebody with a lottery ticket going in and saying, hi, would you check my ticket? The guy says, I'm sorry, it's not a winner. Check it again.
Sure.
Well, guess what? It's not a winner.
But I heard a little bit more. They also talked about having it
There's-
higher at the Menlo and then a further
Yeah.
waypoint
Point
on.
out in the bay.
In the
An
bay.
out-of-the-box solution.
So,
Go to
right,
that
can I-
original presentation, the slide with the first red tracks. That one. This is what they're looking for. Oh, wasn't back up. This.
There.
So here's Menlo. Typically the flights come in and they're established on the straight in for final. So what they're looking for is maybe something like this
Mm-hmm.
or something like these.
Small deviation.
May get them 500 feet at Menlo. May.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit, and that's kind of the promise right now is we'll look at
The
this.
point, the
that's
point is
not what
that
was said
their
at the
first
meeting,
pass
so-
was, this is not feasible.
For a
And then
straight-in
under
arrival,
public,
it is
under
not.
elected official scrutiny, they said, well, maybe there is something we can do. And that's what we're asking the roundtable to be doing.
Okay, you know, and so, right, we're looking at maybe 500, you don't know if you're gonna get it,
Can I-
right?
can
So
I
what
ask-
you're asking is like, okay, you know what, let's scrap the stick procedure, and let's fly.
We are negotiating.
That
with
ain't gonna
ourselves right
happen,
now.
right? And so you're asking me to do you know what, you're asking me to do something that isn't gonna work, and I don't
I
want
think we're
to,
negotiating with ourselves.
you know what, we need to put forth realistic solutions. And the FAA has already said that, you know, flying the candle out the Golden Gate is something that is feasible. You know,
The other thing that the FAA has said is whatever you present to us, make sure that you have the other cities downstream beside you.
Sure.
Which is a
In
big
line.
issue.
yeah, I mean, they're not gonna
So
move.
I see very few of them here.
Well,
And so that is an issue for me. I have to worry about everybody. And so whenever I hear a change that says, oh, hey, do this. Well, gosh, the port was modified to the stick and now the ridge is in effect.
so,
Well, so southern San Francisco. And gosh, we got Pacifica that's in Aquan, Coleman, Daly City, that are talking about the flights that are being concentrated overhead versus others that used to go offshore. So in looking at what we're looking at right now, we're trying to, as I've been showing, get these little wins here, here, and here, so that we don't have the concentration and the frequency. What I've
but
heard
it
so
doesn't
far from a
address the
lot of
stick
people,
concentration during daytime hours.
hang tight, we're getting there. During the daytime hours, if we can get a 10 departure out, that's one less stick.
I think that's.
137 as opposed to
I found quite a
138
few.
noise complaints a
I
day.
found quite a few being out in the noon hour, which is great, going to Chicago. So United's trying a nice little trick.
This is opposite direction operations.
Yep. So when we
I
don't
think
have that many
that's
arrivals,
Very difficult
they
to
go.
do. I
Well,
don't think that's a
it's not
sustainable.
typical.
No,
But
it's
one less
weather-driven.
flight is one less
It's
flight.
not enough. That's your problem.
I'm not arguing.
And you're
with
setting
that.
impossible standards that we can't meet, and that's not our problem either. You're
Let's
forcing,
try and
this is
minimize.
forcing it one way, which is gonna be a
So-
lawsuit.
Cliff,
It's not
you took-
So,
acceptable.
and now, Bert brings up the ODO, that's a very small amount, right? I'm focused on the bigger picture. I'm focused on this stick. And so, and I've asked all of you, where should we put the waypoint? Where should the
We are
planes
You took a
go?
We
flight
are
to
not in a
Phoenix
position-
several
And that's
months
right,
ago.
and that's what I get.
And let me describe the way it was set up at the arrivals meeting. The arrivals people on the dais were not asked where should the waypoint go. Glenn Martin's response was, what are the design criteria I should look at?
Yes.
That is what was being asked.
Yes.
The design criteria that Joe Smidian said was, as John just referred to, was amount of noise, number of people annoyed, a number of times a day. That's what we should be looking at, and that's what you should be putting in the attachment and report from the select committee to the round table, Cliff.
That's the
None
first
of this
thing.
stuff about over uninhabited land. This is totally arbitrary. It's totally arbitrary, and otherwise it makes us look really stupid. It's unenforceable and totally arbitrary and needs to be pulled out. And you need to go and put in words or criteria there that actually meet something, that are objective and
Definable
measurable.
metrics, measurable.
And how about, somebody at one of the last meeting, at the city council meeting where we addressed noise, stood up and said, we do need to set a level of what's acceptable for us as a community. And, I mean, maybe that level of what's acceptable for us as a community is no more than 10 noise events. And when we say noise events, let's define our noise events. Is it 65 decibels, which is what it's set at now, right? Which
Yeah.
is kind of ridiculous, and I think we all agree on that. Maybe we will lower it to 50. Let's come up with some very clear parameters of what we're willing to work with. I mean, I feel like we kind of do need to draw a line in the sand, because if we don't get some things met, what Joel is saying will become an eventuality. And I will be one of those people that sues. And I'll be suing for loss of income.
Jim?
They're not going to be happy.
I'll get you next.
So Peter's metric, again, if we do the Golden Gate, you're gonna have a lot more latitude to mess around with sticks or whatever else. And in addition to that criteria, I watched a little bit of that, but it's also as we brought up, the dispersion. So it's not just the least amount of impact, like I forget we said it here, well, maybe it was Jay, that if there's 5 or 10 a day, it's okay. And so if you just, and we have the non-noise shifting, but if you go back to, depends, it's your frame of reference. If you go back to where SEPTI with all the vectoring and the fanning as we've seen here, well, you had fanning and impact all over the place. They never barely followed the procedure.
Right.
So that would be, although it wasn't so good for us, but the vectoring would potentially go away if you're flying the other flights out the Golden Gate. So it's not just where to put, I think they call it the blue line or whatever, over a certain community, the least number. It's also spreading it out. And I don't know how that's going to work with next gen, but that certainly seems, more reasonable and fair.
I think too, one of the things that we're coming back to, this is not unique to Brisbane because we live here, but every airport is seeing an increase in traffic flow across the country. And maybe we could position this with the FAA that if not now, when's now? Because it's happened in Phoenix, it's happening here, it's happening in Los Angeles.
It's San Diego.
It's in San Diego.
It's everywhere.
And so maybe when we come to the FAA and say, listen, this has to be a building criteria for next gen or any gen. It's completely ignored. This is an unintended consequence. We understand that. So is it nuclear radiation. But that doesn't mean that we can't take that into...
We don't accept it.
We don't accept it, right. We have to say, okay. And I think that maybe, given the FAA, maybe we pull back and stop trying to, tactical. What we're doing is tactical.
Yeah.
And they need a strategic answer. Because this will only increase. More planes, more congestion, more complaints, and nobody's mentioned this, more people.
Right.
When I moved to the state, it had 12.5 million people 35 years ago. It's got
That's-
close to 40.
Right.
There's a lot more people going to be complaining. and that continues to grow. So if we could come to them and say, listen, we've gone 6 ways to Sunday here, and you've done that in every airport that you're dealing with. When is this going to become a criterion for the design of flight patterns, period? Just period. And we do that with roads. We have pollution lines that you cannot build a road there. Why? Because the air above it will be polluted with car gas. So that's a no. So we do it on the ground, we do it in the water. It's highly, highly regulated. You can't go here, you can't go there. You know, if a drop of oil comes out of your boat, you're in serious trouble. So why are we not doing it with the air? This is what we breathe, by the way. It's as critical. So I think we got to come to the FAA, not as, we're angry. Yes, we're angry. And we're tired. But we're tired of the nonsense of it not being a criterion for any changes you're going to make. We are the people who live with the consequence. And I think we need to maybe take that tack and give them a big wide area to say no or yes. But it can't be denied that it will only continue to grow. And I'm afraid what I'm hearing here and what I'm sensing is that everybody is afraid that even with our best thoughts, it will still be an insufficient solution for a variety of reasons, whether it's the way that the FAA feels about what they're doing, or the approachability, or our inability to really fully comprehend all the unintended consequences of us actually designing an air flight thing. Again, this is something that maybe we come back to them and say, we need to really start right over and put this in and address this as, really as a country, but we happen to be pretty vocal about it along with others. Because I just don't see us coming out with a winner. I think at the end of the day, we're still going to have a 3-legged dog. It doesn't hunt.
See, that's one of the problems is you've been working so
No,
hard.
that was very well said, John. I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks.
You've worked so hard on this for so long with all the other city representatives on the roundtable group. Everybody, I'm sure, feels pretty much the same way. They want to try to make things better for their constituents. They've all signed on saying they don't want to shift the noise to other cities, right? Just like Bert said, everybody's got to check off on it. And so that's all well meant in theory. But in reality, it's a problem for everybody. And the FAA created that problem. You didn't, Brisbane didn't create it, Menlo Park, Santa Cruz, nobody else created it. And San Francisco created it by creating the asset of the airport, but then they don't want to take the brunt of the noise over their city either. Well, they have, when you look at these diagrams, you can see lots of lines that go over, a lot of flight paths go over San Francisco, but most of them are very high up. And the ones that are not are noisy as hell. But those are in the poor neighborhoods, and you don't get as many complaints from there. So I'm seeing more numerical, like if there's 20 people complaining in Visitation Valley, for example, individuals, they're not ringing the bell as often as less people here in Brisbane. In Brisbane, I may make 30 reports one day, for example. So it's not all equal. My point is basically, to follow what John said, is that the FAA, Congress, and the FAA have placed our mayor, our city council, and every other city council in the area in a no-win situation. And that's, I think, pretty much what Joel was getting at. And the other people, in one way or another, we're all saying the same thing. They have set you up to fail. They've set all of our elected officials up to sit there and work like a dog. And for Bert, God bless him, he's working, he's getting a salary for it, but at least it's his job. But for you, you're a volunteer, basically. The rest of those people, similar situation. They're beating their heads against the wall trying to solve a problem that they really can't solve. And Bert, being honest, is saying, let's try to take little bites. He's trying to give you some success because he can't give you anything big. He's trying to say, well, let me see if I can help you a little here and a little bit there. And that doesn't make him a bad guy. But it's like he doesn't have a solution that will give you 50% improvement. It's just not in the bag. And he's honest enough to say that. So under those circumstances, it's like an exercise in frustration or exercise in futility, that if you do the best you can, and all the other people on the round table do the best they can, and they all work in good faith, we all still get screwed. And that's not acceptable. And that's what Joel is saying. That's what Layla was saying. And that's why Sue Diggory came up after Layla made the comment about, well, maybe we need to sue him or something, or maybe we need an act of Congress, and Sue Diggory came right up after that and said, yeah, let's look into that, and the roundtable then said, yeah, can we do that? And they said, oh yeah, we can, we have a committee, let's send it to the committee. Now, of course, in a couple of days, we may hear something back from that committee, I don't know. But the bottom line is that you're not Superman, you don't have a magic wand, neither does Bert. You just can't fix it. And that's the honest truth. And what Jay said about going back to SEPTI, it won't work because of the fact that it'll work for us, and it'll put it all back where it was before, and everybody's already said we can't do that.
No, it's historical data. They shifted it to us, all right? I mean,
So now we're saying we want to shift it back to
The
them.
number of flights have tripled.
So now we want to shift it back to them. And I get that. I would be happy with that. But
I hear what you bring up some very, very good points, and and I'm thinking of, wouldn't it be great if the system could just run all the departures up the bay and then out the Golden Gate and then down the coast that are heading to Southern California, and if this process doesn't work itself out, then I think we should be looking at other options. I really, really do. I mean, I'm putting my faith in this initiative, and this initiative is getting towards the end of its process. And if we don't see results that we hope to see, then we got to take a different path. And I totally, agree with that.
that's good.
And so, but I'm just looking at, if we move back to SEPTI, I really don't think that it's going to be better for the Ridge. I just don't, because I think
Let's test it.
I'm just saying that the way that they're going to continue to vector, they will continue to disperse the flights, and you could say this is your waypoint, which is SEPTI, or you could say it's STIC, and I think you're going to see the same flight patterns that are happening right now.
It wasn't there in 2010.
I hear what you're saying, but I just don't think it's going to change. And
you need to step up and be aware and open to this ability to change, Cliff.
Yes.
What I'm hearing is you're saying, the FAA can't do this. But what I'd like to say is, why is the arrivals group able to get the senior FAA people at the table while you're meeting with the FAA behind closed doors and out of view of the public? My concern, Cliff, is that lack of public scrutiny that you're avoiding is reducing the search for
Okay, so first of all, I'm not avoiding it. You know what? No, don't say words like that are inaccurate. We have asked them numerous times, and they are not responding. And then so don't say that I'm avoiding it, right? You're putting words. No, that isn't what it is. So we've asked them to participate. We need them to be at our meetings, and they have not been at those meetings. So, but what we did do, we did have we did have one meeting that was at the airport where we went through the details so that then we could be more productive when we have the technical working group meeting, which is going to be on the 13th in a couple of days.
What I've seen, Cliff, the thing that worries me is there was a report, an attachment produced today that was on the SFO Roundtable website. This one here. Yeah. And we look back at what was in the original report and what is now being offered. And basically it's been gutted.
It's been gutted. Stick it, all the suggestions.
So I talked about this.
Let me explain one of the ones that is not difficult for the FAA that's now been thrown out. What you wrote in the original report was to monitor success, provide a monthly report indicating the percentage of flights that achieve the stated goals of flying within STICs. Also provide data using 1/4 mile point of closest approach. Why is that onerous for the FAA? Why is that being taken out?
Not in the current version.
Yes.
Why is it? And why is it? Let me finish, Cliff.
Well, you just asked me a question, so I answer it. If you ask me a question, you keep going.
Let him answer the question.
Let me answer your question.
the letter that was written from the concerned citizens of Brisbane was saying, tie these goals to the noise monitoring data.
Okay.
So why was it thrown out?
Okay. So the reason why it was taken out, and I did not want it taken out, because I want accountability.
Yep.
Again, I'm working with this bureaucracy. They have a difficult time with people telling them what to do. And so I look at this, okay, I'd like to see the monitoring so I can rate the level of success. But it's more important to me that we get to where we want to be, get that established, then work with the TRACON to establish the monitoring. We can still do the monitoring on our own through BERT's data.
But they're not accountable to it.
I'm on page with you.
Yeah.
But it's like I can only get so much, and so I'm getting this feedback from the FAA. If they're telling me that if these things are in here, it's not going to be, helpful to move things along. Bert's, he's in those meetings or in that meeting. Then I'm not in conference calls. Then we might not get those changes that we're trying to achieve. And so I don't like it. And I wish and perhaps in the end we might just put it back in there. I'd like to put it back in and
put it back in.
He wants to put it back in. He didn't want to take it out. The thing about this is one of the things that's very important, and I think Cliff mentioned it before, is we don't want to be arguing amongst ourselves. We want to try to get united about the approach here, is that anything that's been involved in this process that any of us don't like, and I'm sure there's plenty there, Cliff didn't create it. He didn't create any of it. And the process was created, I guess, by the group or the group together with the FAA, but Cliff didn't create the process, did it? Am I right?
No, the FAA wasn't involved in creating the initiative process.
The roundtable was?
The roundtable was not involved in creating the initiative process.
Okay.
Right?
The FAA was.
The FAA was.
All right, so they put together a framework, and then they said, these are the rules. Now you can play by our rules with us. And they made the rules.
Oh, wait, the rules are different for South Bay.
Okay, but you see, you may think they are, but in reality, what I'm getting from Bert is he's saying, like his lottery ticket example, I thought was a great one. He said, "Oh, would you please tell me if I won the lottery?" And they're saying, "No, your ticket's a loser." "Well, would you please check it again?" "Sure." And they check it again, it's a loser. Well, you can ask them 10 times, and they'll look at it 10 times until say you're a loser 10 times. The bottom line here is that the system stinks, and it's rigged against us. And we all are smart enough to figure that out. But if you look at this process from a strategic perspective of saying, well, how can we maneuver Cliff to do what we want, which is sticking this page or this little thing back in the thing. Well, that's the wrong way to look at it, because he doesn't have the power to tell the other 20 cities, you're going to do it my way. He's not a dictator on the roundtable, right? Or did I miss something?
No, I'm definitely not a dictator. But just kind of getting back to your point about the SEPTI. I mean, when you look at this thing here, I mean, we're central Brisbane. It's further south than the Ridge, and you're asking for the waypoint. You'd like to have it be north. So I mean, just logically, I mean, if the central Brisbane is south of the Ridge, and you're asking for the waypoint to be north, and it's still close to the shoreline, chances are it's not going to be that good for the Ridge. I mean, I'm looking out for you. I'm trying to get that waypoint out to the east.
When SEPTI was in play, we weren't getting pounded, all right? I mean, I'm just telling you.
When SEPTI was in play, there were a lot fewer planes in the sky.
Yeah, that's it.
From 2010.
They were given a heading.
So,
They weren't having.
Bert, can you explain, the best that you can, why the Ridge? And granted, I'm not looking at the data, but I know just from people talking to me who lived on the Ridge or live on the Ridge that it's worse now than it was prior to next gen. So can you just kind of provide some insight to
The
that?
basics are that it's the route itself, SFO, Bay Area to LA Basin, is the most traveled route in the entire United States. And they say the route. By virtue of that and the increased air traffic, we're experiencing more flights. With regard to the ridge, and they're experiencing the flights, the modifications from the port to the stick did have some change on that. A little bit of shift north, a little bit. As far as the reduced vectoring, hands off by the controllers, yeah. Even if we flew SEPTI, I truly believe that we'd still see a lot towards the ridge. I do. No way knowing it until we try it again. There's a problem with going back to the old port procedure. It's a legacy procedure, non-next gen. What the FAA would want to do if you decide that yes, and the other cities decide yes, let's go back. It was better. They will then codify that as an RNAV or Area Navigation Departure. And then in doing so, next gen.
And then we'd restudy it for another 2 years, right?
And
Well, it's
open
going
up
to
the
take 2
pipeline.
years to get it.
No,
Because that'll
no.
have to go back through procedures, analyzed. Right now, the big crux is LA. So, as Cliff said, the longer we sit there and machinate on this, the worse it's going to be for us. The FAA and Congress has already said, we need to move, we need to strike now, we need to do it while the FAA's attention is available for us. My big fear is if this gets pushed down the road a whole lot further, they'll be off to LA. They'll be dealing with those fish to fry, because there's going to be a whole lot of them. I mean, with that document with 600 pages to R3, it's ugly. I mean, I don't envy what's going on down there. My colleagues down there, I really feel for. But in dealing with what we got here, I have to hand it to Cliff and the Roundtable. They've really been doing what they can to do for you. As far as the ask of a quarter mile within stick waypoint, the FAA says our procedures are written to 1 mile within. You can measure to whatever you want. We're going to measure to 1 mile. If the airplanes are within a mile of it, they achieved it.
But, okay, so here's the thing, you said yourself, we're a unique situation. We have 3 airports, all urban, located over urban areas. I mean, all these flight patterns, highly populated areas, everything. Okay. We have, what, doubled our mites since that stupid law was passed in 1990? What percentage do we think our flights have increased, even just in the last 10 years?
50%.
I'd have to look at the entire Bay Area,
You don't have
because
to.
SFO in general, in '99, we were doing 1,300 operations a day. Now we're doing 13 to 14.
Right. Well, could
Arrivals and departures.
could I ask Bert a further question on this? If I could butt in a little bit.
I think she was still there.
Go ahead.
What I want to see is a graph, not only total operations, Leila, but also the ones going off that turn through the Brisbane gate and turn over Brisbane. And I believe those are going up faster than the overall operations.
Actually,
That's my
I do
impression.
data for a living. I was going to say, now that you have Tableau, and I use that, and I use Power BI and a couple of other tools, I'd like to spend some of my free time working with your guys, if that's okay, to help integrate the noise reports that you get from your noise report system, the monitoring levels that you get from the monitoring system, and the flight tracks that you have obviously recorded through the FAA or whichever system you're using there, so that we can put out a map of the Bay Area and just sort of a ripple picture that shows both the flights going overhead and the noise reports and monitoring levels on the ground. Because if we can do that in a pretty
Yeah.
picture, you can put that in front of people and get a little bit more traction with them than lots of people are complaining.
Well, also too, as far as lots of people complaining, I have some people who will give me 70,000 complaints in a month.
Probably,
There's, if you work with data, statistically you know that's crap. Pardon my language, but it is. if you're trying to find the real crux of it, where we've been heading more towards is not so much the volume of complaints, is the complainants.
The number of people.
Well, yeah, you want distinct complainants.
Yes.
But also, that's why I was saying tying it into the monitoring levels of the monitoring system so that you can see, well, it was actually 62 decibels according to these 3 reports, and you got 12 complaints, and this one was only 55 decibels, but you got 17 complaints, and here's the time
We've looked
factor
at that
and all
in
the
the
rest of
past.
that.
There
Yeah.
wasn't a match. They varied disproportionately. One would think if noise levels went up, complaints go up. No. We saw sometimes they go down. It's like, what happened?
If it's a busy morning, I don't reach for the phone 17 times.
Well,
Yeah.
on a busy morning, we're finding that a lot of people reach for the app. So people have told us before, I get 1 flight, I get 2 flights, I'm not going to dive for the phone.
Let me rephrase.
I get
meant
one after
my
the other,
busy
after
morning.
the other, after the other. Yeah, you're damn right I'm going to go for the phone. And that's what we're hearing, and that's what we're seeing.
But
I
you're
was
actually
saying rather
getting
than
reverse of
find
that because
Let her finish her question.
Okay.
Way to go,
So
Leon.
my point was that, I mean, it kind of builds on a couple of other things that have been suggested here, but, okay, we need to set standards as a community. We need to stand behind them of what we're willing to accept. I mean, yes, we need to have some proposals here, but I think that document maybe also needs to include, again, some lines in the sand. But the FAA is funded by taxpayer money, and ultimately they should be reporting to us. And, you know, I think it would be also fair in this document to remind them of that, as well as the fact that, like, we keep hearing, oh, this is not feasible, and oh, I can't, you know. Maybe, what if we, like, wiped out all of the history? What if we took all of those waypoints that are existing already off the map? What if we took the ceilings of all the different flight patterns and this airport, everybody has to come in at this height, and at this airport, everybody has to come in at this height? What if we wiped all that off and started from scratch? Because we are a unique situation here in the Bay Area because we have 3 airports that are in such close proximity, because we have had such a major increase in the traffic. I mean, we have 20 different airlines now, you know, flying out of SFO, and that's not even including the international. You know, we have such an increase of, you know, and it is only going to get worse, right? That, you know, it's not going to get better. Our population is just going to increase. Air flights are going to increase, and let's start from the ground up. I mean, why can the FAA just outrightly refuse us to really take a step back and look at it with fresh eyes? I mean, it just seems to me that that is what this situation requires. These fixes are great. I think we need to propose some key items to them, but I do think we need to be thinking bigger picture here. I think we need to ask them to really take a look at this. Maybe this is something that's a little further long-term, like changing the law, okay? Like that long-term approach. But why can't they think outside the box, to Patrick's point? You know, I mean, we have all the money is there, you know, I mean, it's not like they're not funded. Come on, you know, to be able to do some studies, to be able to re-look at this in a whole different way, instead of just trying to tweak and fix and, you know, move the chess pieces around a little bit here and shift this here and that there. Let's come at it with a whole different approach.
I agree with everything you said, but with one caveat. The FAA does respond to Congress. You're going to need a bunch of Congress critters to make the FAA do what you want.
Yeah.
You're going to get a bunch of Congress critters by building a national large city response group. Start with Move On or some other progressive organization and make this one of their hot topics and build that groundswell. Because until you have that groundswell and those Congress critters, this town of 4,000, or for that matter, this Bay Area of 2 million, doesn't have anything like the resources or the power to make the FAA do squat. Of course,
You're absolutely right. This congressional pressure is what drives the FAA. And we already have, Congressman Spear and Eshu that are working hard on our behalf, but they need more support. But you're absolutely right.
We need to connect with those, there is a groundswell already.
There is a groundswell.
It is happening. Yeah.
Congressional Noise Caucus, that's what we need to write down and look up.
Let's go.
All right, so it is getting late, so Jay,
I didn't, all right.
so,
Bullet point number 29 in this thing that was published on your thing. It says aircraft, long-term, right, long-term for stick. Aircraft should fly the procedure as charted, including flying over the stick, which is over my house. Fly over waypoints and fly to port, fly by waypoints as specified in the departure procedure. So that's our request to the FAA.
okay,
We're
so
requesting that
I
to
know,
fly
you know
over
what, you said that the stick waypoint is over your house. It is not over your house. I'm sorry.
What you mean is that it puts the planes wind up
They
over your
just
house.
go over like that.
But, I mean, that's the result, right? I mean,
Well, sometimes it is, and sometimes it goes out to San Francisco.
Why can't we
And
try a
then-
one-off proposal? Is there something wrong with that, and see what happens instead of trying to predict the future? You guys keep saying, well, I think this will happen, I think that'll happen.
Well,
Why can't we do a one-off proposal like these
testing.
gentlemen are asking? Just, let's do it.
Test, you mean a test?
Test it out, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, okay.
Time
this
for
doesn't
action.
change the game, right? This stick stays the same, then they continue flying. This language,
Is it language is asking them to fly their procedure?
which is-
We're asking
doesn't
them
change- we are the
not to
procedure
vector.
now. It got shifted to us 2 years ago. That's the thing. Bloody procedure is the problem, right?
Yes.
I can tell you as a realtor, we're talking about a $900 million lawsuit. That's what we're talking about. We have
For
$3
property.
billion, we
I
have
just wanna
$3 billion in property. You
The
devalue it by
procedure's the
30%. We can prove that with trends over a couple of 3 years from now. And that's what we're talking
So this
about.
document
There's nothing
doesn't-
wrong with us doing a one-off proposal. Nobody wants to sue them, but they need to understand they're talking about almost $1 billion. That's what we're gonna ask for. That's what I would recommend. That's what's gonna happen. We can prove that. Compare ourselves to other people that have an airplane noise problem. It's real simple. And you'll see our values start to go down. That's what's gonna happen. People are already talking about it. The damage hasn't fully sunk in yet, but it will.
It will at one point, but this language like doesn't help my community. It doesn't help the rich. This language here, this whole paragraph that we're asking, it really doesn't provide relief. The only thing would be the new stick. I like calling it new stick because we use the word stick all the time. And if we reference new stick, which is the northeast position as much as possible, maybe we should change the language and say we're referencing the new stick. Because unless there's a new stick created, we're pretty hosed.
Jay, I had a question. If, following up on your point, because, I don't disagree with you at all. I agree. We're pretty much on the same page with this. The question is, what's practical? Layla's comment was too logical to have any weight with Congress. But if Cliff goes to the next meeting and says, I just want to put it on the record, as much as I want to cooperate with all my neighboring cities and all the people on the round table here, I can tell you that I have serious reservations that any of the things that we're putting forth are going to make a serious improvement for any of us. Other than the fact that, like Jay said, it already got shifted partway north in Brisbane. But all the guts that they took out of your original proposal that they said was too much, you're hitting us with too much material. Maybe in that, maybe there was something that would have helped, I don't know. But now boiling it down where it is now, it's probably not going to do very much. If you say, listen, we're willing to try it, but I don't want anybody to listen to me and think that I'm happy with this. And you've pretty much said that tonight. You can't control it. You can't control the outcome. You didn't create the problem, and you're not happy with the way things are. But you're just trying to do the best you can with what you got. And what you got is a really crappy hand of cards.
Yeah. I'm trying to work with all of you and the other constituents and the roundtable and the FAA. I mean, everybody, all these stakeholders, to try and come up with something that provides some relief. And is it going to provide 100% relief? No, it's not. But
That's the problem.
You know, you know what? Again,
It's worse than that,
So-
because when Cliff started talking about this, not quite a year ago now, but it was sometime last year when you made your first presentation to the city council on this subject that I attended and listened to. At that point, it seemed like you were optimistic that if things went through, if everything fell in place the right way, we might see some significant benefit, which you can categorize as 10, 20, 30, 40%, something. But now, after having put in many more months of work on it and seeing what the reaction is from the FAA to the initial proposals that the roundtable gave them, it seems like you're less optimistic that we're going to get any real significant benefits out of it. And what Bert's saying, I don't want to mischaracterize your words. It seems like he's saying, you know, we want to try to take every little piece we can get that's got a potential benefit, but he's not sugarcoating it and saying, well, oh, this is going to be great for you. He's not saying that.
Yeah, you know, I'm hoping that we can significantly reduce the airplane noise impacts at night. I feel like that is something that we can do, and I think that we did that before Next Gen, and we just, you know, we got to go back to making sure that happens on a more consistent basis.
All right, but one thing that bothers me a lot is when you're talking about night, and the FAA doesn't adhere to what night is. When they start those planes running through here at 6 in the morning and waking people up, that extra half hour, 45 minutes or an hour makes a difference, and we can't even get that.
Also, night for them means midnight, and frankly, you get planes coming through right, left, and sideways from 10 until 12:30.
Till 2 at my house.
You get occasional twos, yes, when the heavy carriers come over. I mean, the freight carriers come over.
Patrick and then Jim.
So, Cliff, back in, I think it was in June, you relayed to me how you had taken a flight to Phoenix that flew over the gate, right?
Not the Golden Gate. It flew over Candlestick and then made its turn towards heading south. I couldn't tell once it made its turn, but well beyond Brisbane.
Okay.
In fact, I took a flight down to LA, and again, it went north and it went right over Candlestick.
Okay.
That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it didn't turn over Brisbane. That's the key point.
It didn't turn over. It turned over Candlestick. It turned over San Francisco.
Okay.
Right.
So we can. You know your flight number. You can go back and look at whatever the noise monitors in San Francisco were saying in relationship. I mean, we're talking about, are these other tracks shifting noise or not? We can know this by the sound monitors. The same is true by putting planes over the Golden Gate. There are sound monitors that can tell us, you can do it for one day, and you will know whether there's going to be a noise shifting problem or not. We should be trying these things. Instead of saying, oh, the FAA won't agree, don't make excuses for them. Don't negotiate with
I know.
ourselves.
I hear you. You know what? I mean, in the document, we are requesting that.
No, you're not.
Yes, we are. You know what? The Night South does that. Okay.
Only for
Again, you know what? You got to take these smaller steps with them. And I hear your frustration. And I would want to go for the throw too, and just have it like you're saying. Like let's clear the slate, and just have everything go out the bay and then out the Golden Gate. And no one will have any problems with that. And I wish that could be the case. And so, but it's not going to happen. And so, and I know you say, well, why are you saying this?
Why not? We don't know that. We don't know. Why are we answering for the FAA? We are not them. Why are we answering for them?
Cliff, can I say what I wrote? I know this got your goat. On the July 24th, I wrote to the residents of Brisbane. I wrote, Brisbane is about to be locked in to receive the majority impact from flights going south from SFO as well as many flights from Oakland. We're still in the same situation, aren't we?
I don't see any
And
change.
then I wrote, this plan is being thrust upon Brisbane without taking on board crucial citizens' feedback, which we're trying to give you, and you're saying, or any demonstrable analysis of any alternatives. What we know is that it will be bad for us, bad for our health, and the quality of our lives. Can you please comment where I'm wrong on this?
We'll continue reading what you said.
If this concerns you, please come to the workshop and speak out against
No,
this plan.
you said that the FAA is proposing a new plan. That's what you said.
Those were my words, which were a little bit
This is-
convoluted.
there's
Okay,
no
but
FAA
the fact of the matter is,
where the
the
words
gist
are.
is this.
Okay, look it.
And
Bert, can you just provide the reason why it would be extremely difficult or impossible to have all departures go up the bay all the time and out the Golden Gate if they're heading south?
There's not enough airspace for the traffic.
Bingo.
I'll say that
Oh,
louder,
pilot.
please.
Not enough airspace for that traffic. When you're looking at San Francisco and Oakland traffic, both trying to use that bottleneck, I just don't see it. We've done the ask before, just an ask. And they said, well, okay, two things. One is you get the buy-in from Marin in San Francisco, and we'll run the numbers for looking at how much we can push through.
And yet they can thread all the pearls on the string for landing.
Right.
And they can't do that for taking off?
Sure
But they can do that for lining them up to land?
Where was Brisbane
Doesn't
flying
make
when they
sense.
moved stuck?
When they do the threading of the pearls for landing, they're starting a lot higher out because descending is easier than climbing.
Uh-huh.
They're starting from
Okay.
a lot further out because they can pull them in at high altitudes all across the Bay Area and then funnel them down at the last
It
minute.
starts at about 200 miles out.
Yeah, takeoffs, on the other hand, you've got that one chute, and the planes can't really do climbs more than at a specific rate, which is, to some extent, also limited by aircraft, which means that their takeoff glide path has to be the most conservative rather than the most aggressive, because the older aircraft aren't going to be able to do it.
But this is all just an engineering problem. This is all just math.
And in 30 years, we'll have better solutions, but in
But
the
we have the computers now.
I don't know if I'll be
This
able
is
to.
all just a math
Can some of
problem.
this language be modified still? I mean, is this the final thing?
We have a technical working group meeting on the
Thursday.
13th.
We're gonna
Right.
go to that meeting Thursday, and we're gonna have a chance to make input on that.
no, we won't, because to be honest, the way it's set up, Tony, is there's the round table people and the public in the back. But when I've gone to these meetings, 2-hour meetings, the public has spoken for what, 15 minutes? There's very little public input. This is our last chance to ask Cliff directly for answers. When we go to the roundtable meetings, it's set up different, isn't it, Cliff?
Yeah, there's no back and forth.
So we will have public engagement at the technical working group meeting.
What for the last? One of the ones
What-
I went to is about the last 15 minutes out of a 2-hour meeting. Pretty, it's not fair, Cliff. It's not set up to receive citizens, in my view, to
The
receive.
select committee meetings have none.
Yeah,
That was done.
Yeah, and I gave you I allowed you to do a presentation at one of the meetings,
It's done.
Peter.
okay.
So
But can you answer a question for me that bothers me? I know we spent a lot of time talking about low-hanging fruit and trying to get small wins. And you said the largest number of flights are from San Francisco to the LA basin. And you also said the second highest number of flights is Las Vegas.
Could
So
I trouble
I-
you for that September data, please?
So I'm concerned is, it strikes me, why are flights going off runway 1L, turning west over Brisbane, turning still, and then going east?
wind.
All right. So here's SFO right here. This thin blue line here is a gate on Brisbane 3. I pulled September data asking for all the tracks that went through Brisbane 3.
Is the gate, Bert, is it east, west, or north, south?
North-south.
Roughly northeast,
Okay, great,
southwest,
okay, fine.
or south, northwest, south. And so, well, when you consider north-south, southwest. And so it gave me 5,411 flights or so for September. Went through that chunk of airspace.
5,000 a month.
In that 1 month. Some of them obviously going to Hawaii. Some of them obviously headed south to various points. Some of them headed east, and some of them headed southeast. Here's the full breakdown by destination, city, state, of what's going on. Those that had 30 or more, we're looking at the LA Basin of that 5,400. We're looking at 1,538. Number 2, Las Vegas, 731. San Diego is number 3 at 575, so on, all the way down to, I took 30 and up. So roughly 1 a day by destination. And that's how the breakout goes. Some of them, as you go further, you'll see Atlanta, you'll see Fort Lauderdale. It really depends on what's going on with the air traffic control system. If there's a storm, if there's something going on, yes, they'll route them on the port or the stick. As far as Las Vegas goes, the old routing used to be a Linden departure to the east, overhead Oakland.
Can you show it on the main map as to
Why
where
are
it is?
Houston flights going west first over Brisbane?
Well, let's listen to what Bert's saying,
The
because
flow works that
I'm
way.
asking.
There might have been storms out there too.
But Bert, why does the extra 6 miles flying over Brisbane alleviate the storms further east?
Yes.
It may be a matter of
If you
timing.
could shoot them down here and then run them off east, you avoided any storm that may have been out here.
Well, why can't? What here? Can I borrow the? Can I borrow the marker?
San
The
Francisco
thing is,
does.
Bert, you're probably. I
California
know you're
doesn't
right,
have
but I'd just like to
Midwest
understand
thunderstorms.
what's going on. You know, what's happening at the moment is the Las Vegas flights. They take off here and go like this.
Yes.
Why can't they go like this?
Yeah.
Like what?
Take off on the right and go down.
Because they're bumping into Oakland, which is taking
Yeah,
off
the
on the
Oakland
left and going.
departures.
No,
You can
the
see
Oakland ones are going like this.
And the Oakland arrivals. And our seeds arrivals. We had this discussion regarding the flight that you particularly picked out for me.
I didn't understand that one, Bert, as to what, you know,
I
it was
wish I
too
had
complicated.
I wish I had the images for you.
Yeah, but it's...
But the long and the short of it was the flight turned left.
Here, do you
went
want to
overhead.
mark it? Because I think this is sort of misinformation or things we don't understand.
The flight in question turned over Brisbane and then departed like this.
Yeah.
The issues involved with that one, if I recollect all of them, were we had a San Francisco arrival coming down the bay. We had an Oakland arrival coming in from the east. We had an Oakland arrival coming in from the west. So to get that airplane overhead all three, they needed to shoot it out this way.
That makes sense.
From those numbers of flights that are going to Nevada, it looks like, what percentage of the flights that go to the Brisbane gates going to Nevada?
It was about
Of all the
500
Las
out of-
Vegas flights?
Yeah.
Well, most of
It's
them.
not all of them, but it's a high
Well,
percentage.
yeah.
It looks like, I mean, there's a 1,500 flights to LA, and you got 700 going to Las Vegas. How many flights,
How many total flights a month
That's
go to Las Vegas?
2,200.
I don't know, I can pull it.
It looks, I would say.
That sounds
it looks
more
like
than weather.
The majority of the flights are flying over Brisbane and going to Las Vegas. Is that a fair statement?
I would say yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not weather
correction.
related.
Why they, that can't be a
No,
storm
it's
every
traffic
day.
related.
Yeah, it's traffic related.
See, there's military airspace out here that is not acceptable to fly through. It's hot all the time. What I'm trying to propose is
Okay.
that our electeds go back to the Congress, the military, and the FAA and say, hey, during Christmas and Thanksgiving, they always talk about freeing up airspace. Well, you know what happens is they basically ask the military, hey, can we tell you guys to not get those hot all the time? We're going to make them cold so that we can fly through it, both for weather and for the volume of traffic that we have. Military generally says, yeah, sure, or no, we need this one. But generally they give them all back. What I'm asking for is why don't we, as citizens, go and say, can we have them cold all the time? The military has to use them when
Right,
they
take
need
them when you need them.
Right.
Right, let's put the shoe on
And
the
so by
right
doing
foot.
that way,
So,
You'll be able to do more Linden Department.
so
That's a really good answer, but
it's
thank you.
9:13. We're approaching 3 hours for this meeting.
yeah.
So I had asked you to provide some data for tonight's meeting. Is there anything else that I asked of you that you have not shown yet?
We have, no.
Okay.
Finish the rest of it.
Okay, so you're still working on getting the information regarding the noise impacts.
2010, 2015.
Yes.
We're still working on the locations for the noise monitors. We do have 3 general locations.
What's a reasonable timeline for that?
For the completion of the data request with the noise monitoring, I would say probably a month and a half out.
Well, what are the monitors?
And can we do a proposal, a one-off proposal? Is there some reason why we can't try that?
For,
Like these gentlemen suggested? About returning back to SEPTI, because there's a possibility it'll work? Can we at least try that?
I have a
I
note.
mean, that solves everything, right? Is
I
it
have-
worth
I have a-
pursuing that if it solves everything?
I have a note in my ask
Yes.
here. And I plan to ask the FAA, hey, can we switch back to the port for a week?
Just a second.
And let us know when that's
Yeah,
happening.
let us know when you
Let
do
us
that.
know
No,
when
I'll
it's
let you know after it happens. I'm serious.
blind test.
Pardon me,
Yeah,
but
blind test.
I
Okay.
have had plenty of my personal experiences and colleagues' experiences. Best example I can give you is Orange County, when El Toro was considering going to a public commercial airport. They published in the paper that they would bring in a 757, a 747, and I forget what, 73 I think it was. Starting at 9 a.m., bling, 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 they were going to run all these approaches. The phone started ringing at 9 a.m. with all these noise reports, religiously, bang, 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 it's terrible, it's miserable, oh gosh. Well, the long and the short of it was, all 3 aircraft were holding off the coast for 45 minutes because there was fog, and they couldn't fly in through that area.
Yeah.
So, pardon me, we're going to run this blind.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I would like to see it
Can
run.
you share the results with us?
Definitely.
A quick question.
I-
What was your
I-
reaction,
I-
what was your reaction to this nice lady's offer? Forgive me, but I forgot your name.
You missed it, I had 2 thumbs
Elena
up.
Schott. Elena Schott.
Elena
We'll start,
Schott.
you know,
2 thumbs
I'll
up.
connect and start spending Saturday mornings on this because I want to
Thank
learn
you,
more. and do
thank
more.
you, Elaine.
Thank you, that's very
But-
kind.
Yeah.
The other question I
question.
had was, will one of the monitors be down in the valley as compared to up on the ridges, please?
Well, obviously, we have the permanent one at Site 7,
Right, that's one ridge.
behind the water tank. We're looking at, I believe it was the Littman School, 300 block of
375,
Rivers Road, and then Mission Blue.
All
Bert,
of the
when-
ridges.
when are
none
those
of
What's
it
the
is-
timeline on getting an answer about the switch to SEPTI, potential switch? What's the timeline on that, to get an answer on that?
I'll start with my
I
ask
understand that,
probably
but that doesn't
Thursday
change
when
the
I
fact
meet
that
with the
the
FAA.
So maybe a
Worse
couple
in the
weeks.
valley because of the reverberations.
We'll see what he says. I could have it on
So
Thursday,
there's 4
yes or no?
monitors, none of them in the
Yes, we
valley.
can do it, or?
Will you please let them know the number I threw out, that it's gonna be close to $1 billion? And that we really should from Brisbane's perspective, we need to prioritize our needs. I get all of the problems and the complications, but the top priority for Brisbane is not the airlines or your problem, it's our problem.
My priority is my
Okay.
health, my
That's what I
family's
get from all
health,
the
is
cities.
being
Right?
affected.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
Oh, yeah.
the deal,
Having
so
effects.
When are
they
the
should
noise monitors-
prioritize that,
3 days a
is
week
what I'm
because of
suggesting.
It's no different from
When are the
poisoning the
noise
people in
monitors
Flint,
going in?
Michigan. I mean, the government didn't take care of the citizens. It's the same thing. It's no different from secondhand smoke. You're
Well,
poisoning your
that
citizens,
would
you're
be
causing
helpful,
effect,
except that then it's after the
cardiovascular.
study, and therefore
The
there
stuff
will
is
be
real.
nothing in
The
it
stuff
for
is
the
done.
study
So
during the
it's
time
proven
which
out.
means intensive
Do you
monitors.
have
thing is
any
you have
idea
to-
when the noise monitors will go in here?
I mean, I'm not in any position to
David
make
been in the
demands, but I
office.
think you're ignoring a big
I
piece
couldn't
of
ask
this.
him today, but I should be able to have an answer.
Possibly within a week or two?
No, I think it's gonna be about 2 weeks out. We have
Oh, okay.
a fair amount of monitoring that we're doing right now.
Did you hear
And
that,
also-
Joe?
No, I didn't.
He
also-
said possibly 2 weeks or farther out.
The
For a
reason
timeline.
being is we have a lot of asks for portable monitoring
Well, you
right
said
now.
2 weeks last time, so is it 2 weeks? I would like something
Possibly.
we can kind of hold you accountable to.
All right.
If we
And
need
what
to take
about the
action,
permanent
it can't go
monitor
on
at the
forever,
ridge?
right? So we need to
Well,
start setting timelines.
here's the deal.
and then
We had an
change it up.
issue in Daly City. We did some monitoring, we had the clock drift. Well, the clock drifted in the computer, things don't tie up. We had to go back out and do another 2 weeks of monitoring. Each of those reports that we do, we bring back to the office, we sit there with headphones, and since it does correlate to a point, with the portable noise monitors, it doesn't work as well. So we have to sit there and listen to each individual event. Airplane, community, car, leaf blower. It takes time. It really does take time. And also handling over 300,000 complaints a month. It's a lot of work. My staff is taxed up here. We're trying to be as responsive as we can. We're also doing far more portable noise monitoring than we've ever done. And we're using some old equipment. We're also looking at some new stuff right now. The new stuff would be able to do a few things. One of them is allow whoever's yard or whatever community we put it in, be able to log in and look at it, see what's going on. And so my policy is open door as possible. Want you guys to see what's going on, want you to have faith in us, want you to believe what we're doing for you. And so that's why we're trying to look at the new stuff in addition to doing the monitor we're doing. Also, if it's crap, I'm going to throw it out and redo it. I want it done right. And that's
Yeah.
why we did that.
And that's great. We're just trying to set some timelines. And
I'd love to give you a hard
Brisbane isn't
timeline.
the cause of Brisbane isn't the cause of this problem. So it's not our responsibility to try to
The
address
problem is it's also
it.
not
So
the FAA.
so yeah, you guys
it's also
need
not
you
the
guys need to
pilot.
do this, and that's
There's too
fair,
many
right?
causes.
And this is your obligation, really.
I would say right now, over the last few years, Brisbane's received far more attention than any other city in
Yeah,
Europe.
yeah. All I'm saying
But
is
the
that you
solutions-
guys need to do this.
Let's fix.
And
Am I arguing with you?
No, he's
No,
got that
I know,
message.
I know. I'm
No.
just saying, and that's all I'm saying, and we'd like to have some timelines. I'd like to have some timelines. So if it's 2 weeks or 4 weeks, it doesn't really matter. It's just let's pick a reasonable time and try to stick to it.
I'm not arguing with any of that.
What about the permanent monitor at the Ridge? What's the status of that?
Site 7.
No, it's at the Ridge. A new one. Mission Blue. I'm at Mission Blue, the permanent monitor.
$30,000, we can put one in.
Cliff, what's the status of that?
Although I believe truthfully, it's useless. Reason being is, as far as the noise monitor goes, what you really want a noise monitor for is to be able to prove the noise contour. You already know it's far outside the noise contour.
I would disagree with that.
It's far outside the noise contour.
I would
CNEL
disagree
noise
with
contour.
I think it's helpful, but
You can argue all you'd like.
But-
I can show you it is outside.
but
But now,
the reason
time out. Let me answer your question.
means?
Yeah,
The CNL noise contour is where you take all the noise over a 24-hour period and you average it. And so you may have 80s and 70s and 60s and 40s and 30s, whatever. But you take all of that, you run it through a piece of software called, used to be called INM, the new one's called,
whatever. It doesn't
anyway,
matter.
it's the FAA-approved software for doing it. It measures on an A-weighted decibel level, 24-hour period, and it takes into the account the quiet times too. During the evening hours, it weights it, and adds an additional penalty 5 times onto it, between 7 and 10 p.m. And then 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., it does a full 10 times penalty. So, if you have one really loud aircraft at night, that will make your entire noise contour. It's a fact of life. It's basically you put in 10 airplanes. And then during the day, you get all those others that are straight value. They won't touch the contour much. So if we had a bunch of 747s going out at night, which we have, that tends to establish our contour.
Well, so when you're saying you're establishing your contour, you're saying the CNEL base level, whatever that number is, say it's 50, 60, 65, that when that's established, that's including aircraft noise that's considered normal for your area?
It's just considered the aircraft noise that happened during that period you monitor.
Okay, and whereas not realizing that that was what they're doing, I was thinking that the CNEL was all the other community noise excluding the aircraft, and that's not correct.
We're focusing on aircraft.
Right. So, because that's what makes the big difference, is that when you take the aircraft noise out, when it's not there, it's quiet. It's real quiet here compared to San Francisco. And of course we have noise factors that are loud, like when the train goes by real quick, when they honk their horn, or a dirt bike. But other than stuff like that, it's pretty quiet here. It's the planes that are driving our noise level up.
And you get 20 seconds of noise and a minute and 20 seconds of no noise. And when you average that out, do a weighted average, all of a sudden the CNL isn't there.
Slides down.
That's right.
Can I argue this
Well, just a
CNL?
moment.
Hang on a
Yeah,
second
who's
here,
afraid?
I'll be fast. I understand your point about the contours, but I think the community here really isn't, I know that's the legal criteria, but isn't just interested in CNL, they're interested in individual events and how loud they are. And the frequency, and like on the ridge, I think there's a very large difference between the DVA over there as opposed to the tank. But that might be useful for the community to know. And I guess you could set it any threshold. What's the threshold, 65?
55, the last event.
Okay, 55 before it records anything. And so it's just another data point. It's probably not going to affect the CNL much, but you'll have more direct data on number of flights, how loud, with the ridge.
And it doesn't take into account
It's $30,000.
the cumulative ambient noise that's going on. It's only, this allocation has been arbitrarily decided.
For
But this
CNL.
this is the noise that you're allowable.
Yeah,
and
that's the.
Who sets that?
The 65 decibel threshold level for requiring mitigation set by the federal and the state.
Glenn Martin, in the
So,
meeting
that-
at
and-
Jackie
and-
Spears.
My contention
That
is
doesn't mean
that's
it's a
too
good
high.
one, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Glenn Martin at Jackie Spears' office, I sat across the table with him, and we talked about it. He goes, they don't have a good way to measure the annoyance of
Right.
airplane noise. That he confessed, and it's true, that they don't have a good way to measure it. And there's theses, there's papers, there's a 400-page thesis from MIT I can send over to you, and it talks about annoyance and plane annoyances. Glenn Martin, he said, we don't have a good way to measure it. What we
Right
have,
now,
CNL is not a good way.
CNL, DNL is the best we have.
It's like a pinch every,
I'm-
you've
you
heard
get
all
no
that, right?
argument from
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I
So
work
I'm
with
just
it
saying,
daily.
I'm just saying.
But
They're actually getting a little further than
the
that.
thing
You're right.
about it is, the FAA has said, all right, fine. Experts, we're turning you loose. Give us whether this is the Holy Grail, what we're using right now, or do we need to change? And so that's being evaluated right now.
A different way of measuring.
Is there a different way to measure it? How do we measure it?
So is that
Where are we
something
going with
is
it?
that something they're evaluating in Washington?
They're actually looking at major airports all over the U.S. They're being very close about it. Rumor has it SFO is one of the airports they're looking at. Do we know for sure? No. I
Okay.
definitely don't know.
Okay. They're doing the same thing that you were talking about before. They want a blind study.
They may be working in my backyard right now and I don't know.
Okay.
All right,
So
so to help us get out of here, right,
We
so we
still
can get
need
home.
to hear
The
the
permanent
status
noise
of the
monitor?
permanent noise
Okay.
of the ridge. We need to hear whether
So
that's been-
that is-
that's done.
Okay, so that is a decision of the city council,
Okay.
right? To
So-
put that in the budget to do that. But we're going to get the temporary ones right now.
My
Yes,
recommendation
can you
would be
answer,
go with the
Cliff,
temporary.
what is the process then that we need to do to get a permanent noise monitor funded by citizens of the Brisbane City Council? What do we need to do to make, we've asked for you in a council meeting for it, that was what, 3 weeks ago? So we're asking, what is the status of this? And what I'm hearing is,
I'll say it again. We're going to do the temporary monitors first, and then and use that data. Then the council will evaluate. Does it make sense to amend the budget and allocate the additional money to put in a permanent monitor? The money would come from the city.
Are the temporary monitors free to the city?
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Okay. So then the other factor that comes in here is Bert just said, nice and loud, I heard him say, I think it's a waste of money to put another permanent monitor in. And so if he feels that strongly about that and is willing to come up with another temporary monitor that can go in a place where we would want a permanent one, then why would we not take that free monitor first and test that
Because
out?
that's only for 2 weeks. And we're doing that.
2 weeks at a time.
What we can do.
we can't get it back.
Oh, wait a second.
What we can do, and the state of California considers, if you do what they call quarterly monitoring. If you go in once a quarter, same time frame, over a year's time, for 10 days, we usually do 2 weeks, make sure we got a good saturation, it counts as a permanent one.
See, and I'd be very comfortable with that. What about you, Cliff?
that's what we're evaluating. So, you know,
That'd be good.
So let's run.
But doesn't that sound like a good alternative?
Let's run the 3 sites.
yes.
See what we find out of that. Save the city $30,000.
Yes.
There you go.
Big. I like that.
And out of this, we may have a site you want to say, that's the one we want to monitor for the next year, going on a quarterly basis.
I
I'd
like
be happy
that.
to put one up.
Okay, so I also had requested that we look at flight tracks for last week, and as well as 2 years ago from that same week. We have this whole discussion about, the shifting of noise, and the only way to really get down to that is to look at what's happening now, what happened a couple years ago. Is that
Right.
doable? Get that flight
It
track
definitely is
information.
doable as far as counts go, but I can show you, just like I showed you with Brisbane Gate 3, it looks the same.
Okay.
You're going to see the same saturation, the numbers are going to be different.
Let me ask this question again, because I know we answered it before. It's a little sideways, but there are zones that are treated differently. And Los Angeles has one, John Wayne Airport and San Jose. And the FAA is a federal, across-the-board institution, ostensibly applying equal access to the air and monitoring of the air equally. There are several places that slid it in, as they say, and got their airspace carved out, which does have an impact. It doesn't allow them to operate as much and as open as we are. And I fly out of San Jose until I can't get a flight, then I come here to San Francisco because they fly after midnight. So in a metropolitan area like this, and there must be other areas, I know John Wayne Airport too, when is the FAA going to say, listen, we can't have these little islands of isolation that we have to work around the majority of the people who live here for these small pockets? I mean, it seems to me...
Congress grandfathered those in under the Airport Noise and Capacity Act of 1990.
Right.
Basically saying if you had a curfew, it's grandfathered in. If you do not, you may not put one in. The only way to get one put in is to go through Apartment 61 study. And to date, the airports that have tried have failed, all of them.
Now, if Congress wants to amend the 1990 Act to take away those people's special privileges, they could do that.
Sure.
Yes. Now, I would like to see the congressman in San Jose try that and see what happens.
Well, we'll see which one's getting elected.
I'm just being literal on that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it just seems to me that that's something too that stands out as
I think we have
inequitable.
one more takeaway here. I only see 15 to 20 people. There's 4,000 people in Brisbane. Everybody here who wants to come to the next one should bring a neighbor.
Bring a
We had more
Neighbor.
the last.
Bring a
If we
neighbor.
don't start spreading the ire and getting the rest of the people involved, we're still going to be 20 angry people in a room.
Yeah, well, we've been trying to do that. We do have 270 signatures on our petition to the city council, so that says something.
Yeah.
But it's not unusual, I don't think, to have the majority of people want somebody else to do their work for them.
This is
That's why we
broadcast
elect the
tonight
city
also,
council.
right?
Yeah.
This is broadcast on TV.
Is that people there that do the right work?
Bert, thanks a lot.
All right, thank you, everybody, for
Thank you,
attending.
Jeff. Appreciate it.
Well,
then we want to
give Cliff an even harder